nuclear. Nuclear and all, as little Jimmy might say. Well, what am I talking about? I don't know. I'm thinking Roger Stone, talking about voter fraud, this thing called Stop the Steal, because that's precisely what they're going to try and do. Oh, the establishment is all like in a tizzy over Donald Trump's popularity. Good. I hope it keeps every one of you up late at night. I hope you're considering leaving politics permanently. You sorry excuses for custodians of freedom. And then, we're going to speak with L.A. Marzulli, who is also on fire. He really is. In the little pre-show chat, getting him ready. It's like I've never heard him so excited. So, he's got Watchers 10 coming up. I doubt very seriously if he's going to say anything about it, even though I was poking him to do it. He probably can't do it, but it's going to be worth hearing. He'll give us something. I'm certain he'll give us something. Okay, grab this. We all knew this, didn't we, really? I mean, if it's a 4-digit code, and then it was suggested, we'll make an 11-digit passcode. It started off a 6-digit passcode, and then it was reduced to a 4-digit passcode. I didn't see that coming either. So now making an 11-digit code, what am I talking about? Your iPhone. Oh, you have an iPhone? Well, didn't we all know that those things are easily hackable? The FBI, we're going to go into court so that you'll give us the terrorist data from the San Bernardino shooting. They probably wanted to see who they... Look, all you have to do, if you're a parent of a child, somebody under 18, you can contact your carrier and see every text that they've ever sent, coming and going, every call. I mean, is there no billing statement? So the FBI simply could not get the billing statement for the San Bernardino shooters, which I don't much think they were, but anyway, they say it's guys in SWAT suits that actually did the shooting, but I digress slightly. You couldn't just get the billing statement and look on there at the calls that were made. You couldn't do that. Failing that, you couldn't have one of your little plug-in devices run the 4-digit code and all the combinations until you came up with it and it goes click, unlocked. Couldn't do that, right? Well, Edward Snowden agrees. The whistleblower whose NSA revelation sparked a debate on mass surveillance has waded into the arguments over the FBI's attempt to force Apple to help it unlock the iPhone 5C of one of the San Bernardino shooters. I thought is that like the non-S model or what? The 5C, what is that? The tiny version? The FBI says that only Apple can deactivate certain passcode protections on the iPhone, which will allow law enforcement to guess the passcode by using brute force. Well, so what about a court order? Here, unlock this. Talking via video link from Moscow to the Common Cause Blueprint for a Great Democracy Conference, Snowden said, the FBI says Apple has the exclusive technical means to unlock the phone. Respectfully, that's bull stuff. But he didn't say stuff. Snowden then went on to tweet his support for an American Civil Liberties Union report saying the FBI's claims in the case are fraudulent. You have to ask yourself the question, though, all right, why are they making such a big deal about this if they can actually unlock the phone? I don't know. This is not cool. Now, I've reported on this before. Invoked the ire of those who thought, and rightfully so, seriously, rightfully so, that radiation shows are scary, but get this is not good. Shocking number of cancers around leaking nuclear plant near New York City. Tens of thousands of cases recently reported, more than anywhere else in the U.S. Why is this story not being covered by everybody? And a teacher says, I can't believe the number of teachers who have gotten cancer. Uncontrollable radioactive flow. Actual releases are trillions of times higher than reported during latest leak. Cracks in multiple spent fuel pools. Intense investigation underway to see if it can be stopped. Riddle me this. Remember all this stuff about the Japanese at Fukushima Daiichi? Well, we were going to build a reconstituting plant so we could take our spent fuel rods and reconstitute them. So we didn't do it either. Is that what you're telling me? So you got an explosion, everybody heard it, in Oconee County, South Carolina. There's a fire at their power generating plant, or was. So you got underground nuclear waste burning in St. Louis. You got Hanford. You got Diablo Canyon. You got Fukushima. You got Turkey Point, Indian Point. I mean, it's no wonder Bezos says he's investigating. He says, well, you got to have a plan B if something bad happens to planet Earth. Like what? Like some of yours and my friends in the nuclear industry deciding that, it's built well enough. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Okay. Did you know locals are eating radioactive food 30 years after Chernobyl? Well, they are. But they are Russian. It does not seem to bother them. They eat and it's not a big deal, but there was a lot of thyroid cancer. And the thing with Japan is just, they've destroyed the country. I mean, seriously. Now, they'll go on for a while. Many of them will live. Many of them will recover, just like after the A bombings back in August of 1945. But it does not bode well for planet Earth when you have all these nuclear plants leaking. We seem to be surrounded. Miami, South Carolina, New York, and then out there in California. Crazy. Absolutely insane. Let's see, what else do we have here for you? Pretty good stuff. Well, you know Judge Napolitano, the guy who had his show removed from Fox News. I guess he was just a little bit too forthcoming in his opinions. Well, this is what he says. Indictment certain in Clinton email scandal before November. By Adam Dick. Expect the indictment of former United States Secretary of State Hillary Clinton or one or more of her high-level aides from the State Department in the next few months. Fox senior judicial analyst Andrew Napolitano explained in a Fox Business panel discussion last week that the granting of immunity against self-incrimination to Brian Pagliano, who helped set up the private email server for Clinton that is central to an ongoing investigation by the FBI, means the Department of Justice intends to secure indictment of a person or people up the totem pole from Pagliano in the Hillary Clinton email scandal. Concludes Napolitano, I think there will surely be indictments prior to November. November, of course, is when the U.S. presidential election occurs, in which Clinton hopes to compete as the Democratic nominee. See, based on the fact that immunity was granted to Pagliano, Napolitano derives many details of the current state of the government's investigation into Clinton's emails. In particular, Napolitano asserts that the following is known. And this is kind of good. I say this is kind of good. Okay, there it goes. All right, here we go. Why does this happen every day? Do we know? So we already know the FBI is interacting with the Justice Department. The FBI has already made some recommendations to the Justice Department. The Justice Department has accepted those recommendations seriously, has convened a grand jury, and has begun or will soon begin to present evidence to the grand jury. And they need Mr. Pagliano's testimony immunized, which means he is no longer of the privilege against self-incrimination because they can't use against him whatever he says. It also means, and this is profound, they intend to indict someone. It's not Brian Pagliano. He can only be indicted if he commits perjury, if he lies under oath. But they intend to indict someone in this chain north of him. Well, we can hope. Wouldn't it be nice if some kind of justice was served? From thehill.com, Comey's FBI makes waves. The aggressive posture of the FBI under Director James Comey is becoming a political problem for the White House. The FBI's demand that Apple help unlock an iPhone used by one of the San Bernardino killers has outraged Silicon Valley. I still don't get it. A significant source of political support for President Obama and Democrats. Comey, meanwhile, has stirred tensions by linking rising violent crime rates to the Black Lives Matter movement's focus on police violence and by warning about gaps in the screening process for Syrian refugees. Then there's the biggest issue of all, the FBI's investigation into the private email server used by Hillary Clinton, Obama's former Secretary of State, and the leading contender to win the Democratic presidential nomination. A decision by the FBI to charge Clinton or her top aides for mishandling classified information would be a shock to the political system. In these cases and more, Comey, a Republican who donated in 2012 to Mitt Romney, has proved he is, quote, not attached to the strings of the White House. And that was said by Ron Hosco, the former head of the FBI's Criminal Investigative Division and a critic of Obama's law enforcement strategies. Publicly, administration officials have not betrayed any worry about the Clinton probe. They have also downplayed any differences of opinion on Apple. But former FBI officials say FBI's moves are clearly ruffling feathers within the administration. Good. Major meat company Tyson is going antibiotic free. Oh, man. Let's see. 4,000-year-old financial indicator says that a major crisis is looming. A 4,000-year-old algorithm. All right. This is from sovereignman.com. Yes. Over 4,000 years ago, during the Sargon the Great's reign of the Akkadian Empire, it took 8 units of silver to buy 1 unit of gold. This was a long time before coins. It would be thousands of years before the Lydians in modern-day Turkey would invent gold coins as a form of money. Back in the Akkadian Empire, gold and silver were still used as a medium of exchange, but the prices of goods and services were based on the weight of metal and typically denominated in a unit called a shekel, about 8.33 grams. For example, you could have bought 100 quarts of grain in ancient Mesopotamia for about 2 shekels of silver, a weight close to half an ounce in our modern units. Both gold and silver were used in trade. At the time, the exchange rate between the two metals was fixed at 8 to 1. Throughout ancient times, the gold-silver ratio kept pretty close to that figure. In ancient Egypt, it varied wildly, from 13 to 1 all the way to 2 to 1. In Rome, around 12 to 1. In the United States, the ratio between silver and gold was fixed at 15 to 1 in 1792, and throughout the 20th century, it averaged about 50 to 1. But given that gold is still traditionally seen as a safe haven, the ratio tends to rise dramatically in times of crisis, panic, and economic slowdown. Just prior to World War II, as Hitler rolled into Poland, the gold-silver ratio hit 98 to 1. In January 91, as the first Gulf War kicked off, the ratio once again reached 100 to 1, twice its normal level. In nearly every single major recession and panic of the last century, there was a sharp rise in the gold-to-silver ratio. The crash of '87, the dot-com bust in the late 1990s, the 2008 financial crisis. These panics invariably led to a gold-silver ratio in the 70s or higher. We are seeing another major increase once again. Right now, as I write this, the author writes, the gold-silver ratio is 81.7. So 81 to 7, that's a strange ratio, nearly as high as the peak of the '08 financial crisis. This isn't normal. In modern history, the gold-silver ratio has only been this high 3 other times, all periods of extreme turmoil, the '08 crisis, Gulf War, and World War II. This suggests that something is seriously wrong, or at least that people should perceive something is seriously wrong. There are so many macroeconomic and financial indicators suggesting that a recession is looming, if not an all-out crisis, that it's ridiculous. In the U.S., manufacturing data show that the country is already in recession. Default rates are rising. Corporate defaults in the U.S. are actually higher now than when Lehman Brothers went bankrupt in '08. These defaults have put a ton of pressure on banks, whose stock prices are tanking worldwide as they scramble to reinforce their balance sheets against losses. During a meeting with a commercial banker in Sydney, author was told that Australian regulators are forcing the bank to increase its already plentiful capital reserves by over 40% within the next several months. This is an astonishing and almost impossible order. So the bottom line, if you're a speculator in precious metals, now may be a good time to consider trading in some gold for silver. You know, that's what everybody's been saying is the upside, copper especially. Chuck Coppice has always said the upside he thinks is greater in silver. So there you go. It says right here, our goal is simple, to help you achieve personal liberty and financial prosperity no matter what happens. So that's from Sovereign Man. And that was written by Simon Black. And there you go. Anything else of note? Oh. General Boykin, first transgender man enters my daughter's bathroom, won't have to worry about surgery. Let's leave it at that and talk to Roger Stone. Woo, then that's a real dad. Seasoned political operative and pundit. Veteran of 8 national presidential campaigns, having served as senior campaign aide to 3 Republican presidents before leaving the GOP for the Libertarian Party. Author of the New York Times bestseller, The Man Who Killed Kennedy, The Case Against LBJ. He's written opinions for, Fox Opinion, Breitbart News, StoneZone.com, and the op-ed page of the New York Times. A well-known voice in politics for over 40 years, Roger Stone often gives insights on behind-the-scenes political agendas on Fox News, CNN, NBC, and MSNBC. He lives in South Florida. And he looks like he's enjoying himself in South Florida right now. That is an amazing hat. You look good in hats.
Yeah, this is a homage to E. Howard Hunt, the legendary CIA operative and Watergate burglar. As I think you know, John, my co-author on my new book, Jeb and the Bush Crime Family, which is a runaway bestseller, by the way, and I think helped drive Jeb out of the race. My co-author, St. John Hunt, is the son of E. Howard Hunt, and he gave me this chapeau, which once belonged to his father.
Wow. So that's actually a Hunt hat.
This is a Hunt hat. And of course, he was in on the Bay of Pigs, very tied to the deep secrets of Watergate, revealed in my book, Nixon's Secrets, and revealed in St. John's own book, his 2 books, about his father's role in Watergate and the murder of his mother by the CIA to silence her in Watergate. So, the book, of course, on the Bushes is very timely. Neil Bush, brother of George W. Bush, son of George H.W. Bush, a man who defrauded U.S. taxpayers out of $1.5 billion in a colossal SNL scam. A man who, if his name was Smith, would still be in prison. He has just endorsed Ted Cruz and will be heading Ted Cruz's finance committee.
That's very, very interesting. Very interesting indeed. Yes.
You can't make this stuff up.
No, you can't.
Make it up.
Yeah, how is Jeb, Bush Crime Family? How's that going? How's it being received?
Well, I think it's achieved its goal. Look, when Jeb took one look at the revelations about his financial empire and where his money came from and how he profiteered on the governorship and he profiteered on the family's name, he made millions while Daddy was vice president and president using his name on sweetheart deals, some of which happened, some which didn't. But look, we reveal the fact that he escaped prosecution in a $74 million fraudulent import-export bank loan. We established that he was the recipient of a $4 million U.S. taxpayer-financed personal bailout when Daddy was vice president. We confirmed that he's made millions in secret side contracts with Tenet Healthcare on Obamacare and its expansion. We confirm that he owns a piece of the federal contract for the notorious Obama phones, the cell phone program that gives cell phones to poor people, millions of them. He is a secret partner in TrackPhone, the company owned by the Mexican billionaire Carlos Slim. So Jeb has profiteered. I think this book also, John, delves right into 9/11. A number of the hijackers trained right here in Florida, where I am today, in an undisclosed location. And there were, at least according to Freedom of Information Act requests that I filed, 28 complaints from people who lived in the area, the Tampa area, complaining about these odd men with beards who were up to something. And at the flight school, there were complaints that they were up to something. And Jeb Bush's Florida Department of Law Enforcement did nothing. Now, if you've read the 9/11 report, you know that we have multiple tips that this program is coming. The FBI is tipped, the CIA is tipped, NSA is aware, Condi Rice knows, Tenet knows at the CIA, and they do nothing. Yet when the CIA director, George Tenet, retires, what happens? George W. Bush gives him a medal. A medal.
Yeah. Well, that's like giving Capone Italian American Award of the Year or
Yeah,
something
exactly.
like that. You know.
Yeah, exactly. So the book is having a giant impact, John. It has really been gratifying because it's so much more than Jeb. It's the epic crime of his grandfather, Prescott Bush, the patriarch of the family, Adolf Hitler's personal banker. We have the archives that prove that his bank was seized in 1942 for treasonous activity because he made millions arming the Nazis, financing the Third Reich war machine. He also helped, he made a fortune in the steel industry using slave labor at Auschwitz. We also talk about the deep secrets of George H.W. Bush, his time in Skull and Bones, a secret society, his early work for the CIA, which he lies about in front of the U.S. Senate confirmation hearings, his involvement in the Bay of Pigs, his secret involvement in the Kennedy assassination, and the fact that for 30 years, George H.W. Bush couldn't remember where he was on the day Kennedy was killed. Until in the 1980s, federal documents would be declassified, proving that he was right there in Dallas, stayed at a hotel, the Sheraton, steps from where Kennedy was gunned down at Dealey Plaza the very night before, and had reservations to return that there on the 22nd, which he didn't honor, flying instead to Houston. So we also chart the connections between George H.W. Bush, the CIA director, and Georges de Montshield, the Russian CIA handler Lee Harvey Oswald, a man who committed suicide when the government tried to question him in the House Assassinations Committee investigation, who is found in his private Hermes notebook, address book, in his inner breast pocket of his dead body. They find the unlisted phone number for George Poppy Bush, the CIA director at the time.
I got to ask you something, Roger. Here's his book, folks. I was playing with it a minute ago. And let me just read a few of the notes off the back of it, seriously. Known for hardball politics and a cloak and dagger sensibility. That's from the New York Times, of all things. Stone exposed LBJ, now he rips the veil off the Bush crime syndicate. East Orlando Post. The Atlantic says, skilled in the dark arts of politics. David Brooks with the New York Times. Again, New York Times. A dashing, colorful artist of the underhanded. And the Village Voice says, the most dangerous man in America. One of the photographs in here is of Barry Seal. CIA drug smuggler Barry Seal was murdered weeks after threatening to expose Jeb and W in drug dealing. He also died with George H.W. Bush's personal phone number in his wallet. What the hell is that supposed to tell everybody?
Well, and it's very timely because, as you know, Tom Cruise is about to release a movie on the murder of Barry Seal. Barry Seal is a major character in the very popular television series Narcos. The Barry Seal stories are very compelling. Barry Seal is a legendary CIA drug pilot. He weighs 300 pounds. He's deeply secretive. He keeps all of the records that he has amassed in this enormous drug trade in the trunk of his white Cadillac. He is known for his ability to fly very low and detect radar. And he's running millions of dollars worth of drugs, having worked, yes, for the cartel, but more recently in the employ of the CIA. When he gets jammed up on IRS problems, he goes to Poppy Bush, his handler, the man who's the head of the Intergovernmental Task Force, charged after the Congress cuts off funding for the Nicaraguan rebels. They go into the drug business. They're trafficking millions of dollars worth of cocaine into southern United States, most of it through Mena, Arkansas, where they have a pliable, in fact, complicit local governor, Bill Clinton. His associate, Dan Lassiter, is holding Bill's slice, as they say in the bribery business, because he's taking a payoff off the top so that the Arkansas State Police look the other way. And southern Arkansas is a drug market. There are drug drops there regularly. As you know, in my book, The Clintons' War on Women, we reveal that two young boys who saw a drug drop, saw the wrong thing, are then brutally murdered, found on the tracks of a train. The train hits them. The coroner says they smoked marijuana and they fell asleep on the trains and were killed by the train, disregarding the bullets in the back of both their heads.
You know, you made mention that John Hinckley, who took a crack at Ronnie Reagan, fired 5 shots and none of them hit President Reagan. What's up with that, Roger?
Yeah, I think that particularly because of the success of Bill O'Reilly's book, Killing Reagan, he misses the whole backstory. George Bush is forced on Ronald Reagan at the Republican convention. Reagan never likes him. Reagan kind of gets the cut of his jib at the famous Nashua debate, where Bush has won Iowa. He has an enormous amount of steam. The Gipper is fighting to come back in New Hampshire. He agrees to a one-on-one debate with Bush. Bush is anxious for that. But the other Republican contenders, men of stature, Howard Baker, Bob Dole, Phil Crane, John Anderson, show up and demand to be admitted. Reagan says, pull up a chair, let everybody speak, the most popular view, obviously. And Bush acts like a petulant ass, saying, no, those aren't the rules. There'll be no debate unless it's just me and Reagan. So he looks like an exclusionary jerk. And he couldn't think on his feet. From that moment on, Reagan never respected him. Nancy didn't like Barbara. Barbara was very vindictive, very nasty. It's absolutely true. Nancy Reagan, who I knew well, was a fierce protector of her husband. When I was organizing Connecticut and had Nancy Reagan visiting for a Connecticut Women's Republican event, it was a very chilly day and it was early in the season, and I had the foresight to bring a stole, like a Pashima type stole, and I gave it to Mrs. Reagan for warmth. And from that day forward, I could do no wrong with Nancy Reagan. She liked being in my states. She said nice things to me about my performance to the governor, and we were very good friends. But I like to think it was probably because of my quick advanced man-like thinking in keeping her warm. She was eternally cold. It was her constant complaint. I had read that.
All right, you know, Roger, I went up to CPAC with the crew to try and do some commando broadcasts up there, not knowing what I was getting into when I got there, because I couldn't really get a straight answer out of anybody. But anyway, he yielded some very good things. And I've gotten a lot of email from people. You know, I say a lot of email. To me, like more than two is a lot if it's on the same subject. But it's really limited to two or three. So let me redact the a lot of email, just in the interest of being straight up about it. But there are suggestions that it's a bunch of neocon trash. Stay away from there. You're not gonna get anything going up there. It's like, well, I don't troll. I trawl. I throw a big old net out there and get some people that can talk about some things that I think our members would like to hear. But let me ask you this: what's up? I mean, I sure as hell didn't go there to see Marco Rubio deliver a speech. Trump blew it off. In fact, a lot of people blew it off that are of the higher profile. But what I was seeing was the Second Amendment Foundation, NRA was there, lots of alternative media was there. I mean, I really didn't see, except in the ballroom at the Reagan dinner setup, so to speak. I really didn't see the ones that bore everybody to death by just continuing to toe the official line of whatever secret agenda seems to be running that's right out in front of everybody, and we suspect what it is. We just don't have the details on it. So I didn't see you up there. I don't know if you made it there or not, and I don't know if it's something that you would ever attend. So,
of course, in my younger years, I attended faithfully because I was a member of Young Americans for Freedom. I was also the Young Republican National Chairman, and I was and am a participant in the conservative movement. That's enlightened brand of conservative that was really fathered by Bill Buckley, who had his own CIA connections.
Oh yeah.
But it was a non-racist, non-bigoted, more of a small government, more liberty. Now and then, but I think it's key to understand, and at this point, the conservative movement becoming dominant under Reagan begins to fractionalize. Obviously, there are things that we have in common, a belief in freedom and personal liberty, but we have neocons and we have Ron Paul supporters. We have people who are centered around fiscal issues. People are centered around immigration issues. People whose interests are economic, and therefore the movement is more diverse. I have not been to a recent CPAC. I have many friends who go, but you know my philosophy. I've been out peddling my book on Lyndon Johnson, and if 3 people will show up for a manhole covering, I'll come and talk about the book. So I'm always interested in meeting conservatives and alternative thinkers and libertarians and anarchists and anyone who has figured out that the official narrative of the government is just nonsense. It's just BS. Look, I was an insider for 40 years. I grew up in the corroded rectum of the two-party system. I worked in the Senate, I worked in the House, I worked actually in 9 Republican presidential campaigns. I worked and knew 3 American presidents. I have my political regrets. Yes, I did help in the recount for George W. Bush. Enormous mistake, an incredible mistake. In truth, until I did my research for my book on Lyndon Johnson, I never realized quite as much how evil and corrupt the Bushes really are, and how their real story is a story of privilege, of elitism, of inside ties, of money, of the secret state, intelligence connections, the CIA's, the Saudi influence, big money, the greed, the epic greed of the Bushes, all at a time that they wrap themselves in integrity and courage and public service. Jeb says, my father is the greatest American alive. No, Jeb, he's not. He's a cunning sociopath who ran drugs and lied about it, who was involved in political assassinations here and abroad, who changed the entire role of the CIA to become more inclusive and violate our civil liberties. This story isn't over. With the rise of Neil Bush, George P. Bush standing in the wings, the elected Texas land commissioner. They're grooming him for governor so they can groom him for the presidency, so that they can profiteer. And what do we get? Their policies destroy the country. It's not just that I think they're corrupt and they're profiteering. Their deregulation, their oil policies, their immigration policies, their fiscal policies, their foreign policy. They're destroying this country. They're driving our quality of life into the gutter. They are ending any opportunity for upward mobility for anybody. I think the fight against the Bushes continues. And in all honesty, I can tell you this. Right now, Barbara Bush and her husband have urged Jeb to take the $30 million in Wall Street money he has left in his super PAC and shift it to the multi-million-dollar anti-Trump campaign you see going on your television, your radio, your cable right now.
Yeah, you know, Roger, it really things are simpler than they seem, ladies and gentlemen. In my opinion, they are much simpler than they seem. I trained for a number of years with a very, very good, authentic, no kidding, he just, in his own words, he gets off a plane and they see his little yellow face and they see his braca belt and they say, oh, he must be master. The man I trained with and my family trained with is a genuine martial arts master. And he said in one of his books, or he wrote in one of his books rather, if you have corrupt leadership, you will have a corrupt country. If you have a virtuous leader, you will have a virtuous and happy nation. And that's what's happened here. These people, it's not just that they profiteer, it's that their tentacles, their criminal tentacles, reach into every aspect of our lives. And it's like Bricktop said, if I throw a dog a bone, I don't want to know if it tastes good or not. You stop me again while I'm walking and I'll cut your Jacobs off. Well, that's how these people are. You stop them to confront them with the question as to what are you doing? And you're going to lose your Jacobs, so to speak. Now, why, Roger, are the obviously they all want to win. I mean, that's an easy one. But apart from that, why are these people in such a clearly to be seen panic over the popularity of Donald Trump? It's not just that he may win. I suspect it's because of the influence they think he will wield within government once he's in there, which it looks like he may be, unless, of course, they stop him.
Yeah, no, here's the issue quite simply. In Trump, they see a man who is uncontrollable, meaning they can't buy him. Normally, the special interests, the lobbyists, the billionaires, the industries, those with heavy interests in the decisions of government so they can continue to make millions of dollars and sometimes raping us with the help of government, they're very concerned about a president they have nothing on. They have no leverage with. Trump would be an honest broker for the American people, and it scares the daylights out of them. Also, the lobbyist class, the consultant class, the inside the K Street, Capitol Hill class, they have no connections to Trump. They can't make millions of dollars selling access or influence with Trump because Trump can't be influenced. And then lastly, of course, is the fact that the establishment, as we saw in 1964, when Romney, Rockefeller, Scranton, the Republican establishment waited too late to try to stop Goldwater, and before they knew it, he had an uprising, just like the one you see today. He was sweeping Republican caucuses and late contests. And that was even after stumbling in some of the early primaries. But they reacted too late. And what did they say? Nazi, bigot, anti-Semite, although Goldwater was half Jewish, a madman, mentally unstable, will put his finger on the button. What did we have last week? A full page of neocon foreign policy experts, 200 of them saying Donald Trump is unfit to be president. I remember the newspaper ad where 1,000 psychiatrists who had never examined Barry Goldwater said that he was unfit to be president, paid for by Republicans for Johnson. So this is an old game. I don't think it's going to work this time because, as you point out, the voters are angry because the rise of Trump is a repudiation of 30 years of bad decisions, of failed policies. Whether it is Bush, Clinton, Obama, Bush, Obama, question mark, the policies remain the same. Endless war, erosion of civil liberties, bailouts for the big banks, massive debt, increasing debt, more borrowing, incredible spending. The Republicans spend like Democrats. George W. Bush spends like a drunken Democrat. There's no fiscal discipline. Our IRS is gone wild. It has become a political instrument. We are covering up the death of men in Benghazi and why they died and how they died. The people are too angry. And in Trump, they see a repudiation of fiscal policies that have left us broke, immigration policies that have made our streets unsafe, a foreign policy, an adventurous foreign policy that has cost us blood and treasure. And I'll say this, under Donald Trump, you will not waste a drop of American blood or a dollar of American treasure. A foreign policy that asks one simple question at the beginning. What's in the interest of the United States of America? Not our allies, what's in our interest? The American people hunger for that. So I think that that's why you see this, even yesterday, big roll up in the latest primaries. Now we're heading to Florida and Ohio and Illinois and Missouri, where I expect that Trump NATO is going to continue unabated because it's an insurrection. It's an insurgency. It's a revolt against the established order. It's an uprising, if you will, and it's gaining steam. Look at the people at these rallies. They're black, they're brown, they're white, they're middle class, they're working people, and they're worried about the promise of America. They see the America that they know and remember slipping away. And Trump stands out as someone who has the courage, the fortitude, the cojones, and this is the most important part, the independence. Bill and Hillary are funded by a mountain of special interests. She's owned by the Mexican billionaire Carlos Slim. He's laid billions, literally billions on them, or hundreds of millions on them, to be correct, in return for decisions that were made at the State Department that enhanced his business empire and his cellular phone monolith.
Right.
So they are bought and paid for. Goldman Sachs, Bank Corp. I mean, Hillary gives a $675,000 speech. She talks for 20 minutes to Goldman Sachs. That's outrageous. What did she say? And she says she's going to bust Wall Street.
You know,
not a chance.
I'd pay that kind of money just to see her jump off the Hollywood sign.
I'm with you on that.
I'd pay for that. I'd sell all my stuff and go, hey, come on, I'm a little short here. Somebody help me out. I got to see this.
Yes.
Let me ask you something.
I kick in on that.
Why am I seeing stuff like Trump is run by Netanyahu? This may not be your thing, but I suspect you're aware that this is going around right now. What does that even mean?
Well, first of all, I don't think his handling of questions regarding the Middle East have been particularly adept, meaning I don't think he has well expressed where he's coming from. Look, he has deep ties to Israel. His daughter converted to Judaism. His grandchild is of the Jewish faith. The top executives in his company, men like Alan Weisselberg, one of the smartest guys I've ever met, is Jewish. The idea that he is somehow bigoted is an absurdity. So I reject it. Totally reject it.
Well, what about the part about Netanyahu in some way running him or controlling him?
Running him then he would have a more pro-Israel stance in his public comments. Recognize what he's saying. Right. I'd be an honest broker. I love Israel, but I wouldn't have any presumption against the Palestinians. And the Jewish lobby's going crazy, saying, no, that's not what you have to say. What you have to say is, Israel right or wrong? Whatever they do, I back it, whatever it is, because they're our allies. And Trump doesn't quite get there, yet he has these long-term ties. So, if anything, I would think Trump's messaging would upset Netanyahu, who wants a more pro-Israel stance from the next president. That's why the charge doesn't make any sense.
Roger, this may be a little. This is one of those things that's off the page. But you and I mean, we've talked enough to each other, and we've run into each other and gotten to shake hands and so forth. But so I feel like I know you a little bit, even though we haven't had a chance to sit down and have a drink or break bread together or any of that. I still feel like I know you. So I want to ask you something. Help people out here. When you put your research, all this research that you've done, you've been inside the machinery, you understand how this stuff works, you understand that if they say, I wish you only the best, that could very well mean, I hope you die. You know, like the LA Speak, there was a book about that some years ago. Can you help people program themselves in like 60 seconds or less to understand what the signs are that they're being misled the moment that it comes out of some pundit's mouth or some talking head on mainstream media? What can they do other than sense that there's something? Because they'll throw something out there that it's like, it seems like a freestanding comment, but it's not a freestanding comment. It's linked to something else that you're going to hear about either obliquely or overtly later. In other words, what can you say to people to help them sharpen their critical thinking skills when they are analyzing what's being said to them over mainstream media and from these politicians who come to them through mainstream media?
Well, here's the problem. There's no easy answer. That's because not everyone in mainstream media is corrupt. Only some are corrupt. There are some young men and women who are trying to be independent journalists and report the facts as they learn them. And they do good reporting. And for example, the New York Times series on the Ukrainian conglomerate that bribed the Clinton Foundation to get control of 70% of the uranium in this country, for example. Excellent series. There are some reporters who really try to verify their reporting and triple check sources and report it the way they see it. And then there are others who are just left-wing, knee-jerk hit people who want to buy a narrative dictated by someone else. Look, I was on with BBC the other day, and I began to allude the fact that Bill Clinton is a sexual predator, and that he has numerous women who have accused him of sexual assault. And you know what they did at BBC? They pulled the plug. They literally cut me off. Now, if that isn't Soviet-style censorship, what is? It's interesting to me, and this is very important to me. Our interview on another program is what made my Kennedy book, The Man Who Killed JFK, The Man Who Killed Kennedy, The Case Against LBJ, a New York Times bestseller. So I have a great kinship with you, and I love doing your show. I do think that we are at a crossroads where their inability, the security state's inability to control the narrative, because in the old days it was just ABC, NBC, and CBS, the New York Times, and so on. Today you have multiple alternative media voices, and they in turn keep the mainstream media honest, the honest ones, that is. Now there's some people like I don't know, Chris Matthews, who is he's a disinformation agent. He's too in love with the myth of the far left to be an objective journalist in any way. There are other very hardworking reporters at Politico, at the New York Times. I don't really know any good reporters at the Washington Post, but there are many fine reporters, the New York Post and others, and online reporting, Breitbart, Daily Caller, Infowars.com. There's a wealth of information out there that keeps the mainstream media honest and forces them to report on things we need to know. So you can't always tell whether what you are getting is disinformation. Yeah. The short answer is the long answer to your question. You have to look at the source. You want to know what, if you want to get the truth, then go to a news outlet that you have some confidence in.
You know, you want to hear a good one? I'll give you one real quick. This comes from Top Info Post. Yes, topinfopost.com.
I like it. I might even own that URL. I'm not sure. Go ahead.
Well, what it says right here is UK man wins court case against BBC for 9/11 cover-up. Now, get this, folks. This is amazing. You just heard Roger talk about how BBC pulled the plug on him. Well, get this. Tony Rook, ROOKE, refused to pay a TV license fee because the BBC intentionally misrepresented the facts about the 9/11 attacks, he alleged. It is widely known that the BBC reported the collapse of World Trade Center Building 7 over 20 minutes before it occurred. WTC-7 was a 47-story skyscraper that was not hit by a plane on 9/11 but collapsed at free fall speed later that day. And here's the wrap-up. So Rook said the BBC had to have prior knowledge to a terror attack, making them complicit in the attack. He presented the BBC footage to the judge, along with a slew of other evidence, and the judge agreed with Rook that he had reasonable case to protest. Rook was found not guilty, and he was not fined for failure to pay the licensing fee. Now, okay, not much of a payoff, and yet, on the other hand, what a huge payoff. Big question is, where's the freak out? Why are people not screaming about Building 7? You can ask 100 people, and 98 of them don't know anything about Building 7.
No, there's been a mainstream media blackout on this. Look, I'm not an expert on 9/11. I know nothing about explosives, and I understand a lot of research and scholarship out there. But I do know several things trouble me. The first one is that the Saudi role has very carefully been concealed from the American people. There's 29 pages in the 9/11 Commission report that is redacted. And we know because Senator Bob Graham and other members of Congress who are fine men of high integrity have read the material, as they're entitled to as members of the committee, and they tell us that it pertains to the fact that the Saudi royal family financed the attack of 9/11. We also know that the bin Ladens are close associates of the Saudi royal family. We also know that the administration of George W. Bush spirits dozens, almost as I believe 28 bin Laden family members out of the country on U.S. aircraft the night of 9/11. When all commercial and military aircraft is locked down for security reasons in the immediate aftermath of the attack on America. I interviewed a Boston police officer who was called in for extra duty to provide security for the bin Ladens. At least 3 family members who were taken out of the country should have been questioned because they had established ties to terrorism. Perhaps they should have been detained. And as I said earlier in the show, we know that a number of the hijackers were training in Florida under the nose of Governor George Bush. He had multiple warnings, and he did, or should I say tips, and he did nothing. So as far as Building 7 is concerned, people I like tell me that they make a strong case that the collapse of Building 7 is mysterious, indeed ridiculous. Judge Napolitano's raised this question. Alex Jones, both good friends of mine, have raised the question. I'm not an expert, but I'm enough to say, well, it merits a study, and it certainly is suspicious. It's something I have got to read about when I get off the circuit of driving Jeb out of the race, because 11 days after my book came out and he read it, he went crazy at a fundraiser, called me a nut, which is not what he called me when they called me desperately to go to Miami in 2000 and save his brother's derriere in the recount in Miami, and where I had some part to play in the famous Brook Brothers riot, which shut down the recount, making George W. Bush president of the United States. I wasn't a nut then. So, yeah, you're absolutely right. I've been inside the belly of the beast. I've been inside the machine. And it's what you see is amazing because you're not being told the truth. Now my mission is very clear. People need to know who Hillary Clinton really is. They really need to know about the epic crimes and the fact that she's not an advocate for women and girls. She's an abuser of women and girls. That Bill Clinton is a Bill Cosby-type predator, and that he has bitten, assaulted, raped, and exposed himself to multiple women. The difference between Cosby and Clinton is that Cosby would drug his victims, where Clinton would just physically overpower them and bite them. So there's a real difference in their MO. If Jesse Jackson were here right now, he would see the racism in prosecuting Cosby, but not Bill Clinton.
Oh, sure.
The black man is arraigned, but the white man campaigns. I think it sums it right up.
Mm-hmm. All right. Now, as far as stopping the steal, there's voter tampering suspicions, vote tampering suspicions all over the place. This, by the way, Kathy, thank you for sending me that link about the BBC story. Somebody was telling me about a little primary thing. Anyway, there was somebody on the presidential list that he'd never even heard of, and he actually witnessed this digital voting machine selecting a person that he knew nothing about. And he said he changed it like 3 times, as if I've got the story. I read it yesterday, so I've slept since then, clearly. But what are we going to do about no paper ballots? What are we going to do about...
Let me address this, because I think a lot of people are unaware of what's going on.
Please.
In the immediate aftermath of the Texas primary, the mainstream media, including KLBJ, the radio station once owned by Lyndon Johnson and his wife, reported multiple reports of people saying that they cast their vote on a machine for Donald J. Trump and they saw it register for Marco Rubio. We ultimately determined there were as many as 600 complaints in Travis County alone. By afternoon, there were several hundred complaints of the exact same thing in Dallas County. By that evening, there were 6 counties with these identical reports. It was at that point that I set up an 800 number where people who felt they had been involved in voter fraud or irregularity could call and could send photographs or video to us to examine. Almost immediately, we had a similar spate of complaints coming in from Oklahoma. Before long, it was Kansas. Then we started getting reports several days ago of discrepancies in the Ohio absentee ballot and early voting program. Now, all of this coincides with where Ted Cruz is doing well. We now have more complaints today in Idaho and Hawaii. It's why I was a little late getting on the broadcast. We are deluged with hundreds of calls from those states. We have people who showed up to vote for Trump at a polling place that had been advertised in the newspaper and had been previously used by the Board of Elections to find no one there and no one who knew where voting had been moved to in that precinct. So we have a pattern of this, moving polling places around to avoid Trump voters in Hawaii. So what you see here is the establishment. Now, what does it all mean? Well, first of all, you can go to stopthesteal.org to read about all this and to see where you can report any funny business you know it pertains to voting in your state. Secondarily, you can send a contribution, because I have to get election lawyers to go and document all this, and I'll tell you why. If delegates have been illegally elected through voter fraud, they can be challenged in the Credentials Committee at the Republican National Committee. The Republican Convention is not governed by federal law or state law, only by its own bylaws. The bylaws allow the Credentials Committee, and indeed the convention itself, to seat whatever delegates from Texas they deem to be legally elected. So we could challenge Cruz delegates that were elected by fraud, by cheating. I think that there is widespread voter fraud going on as part of the effort to smear and stop Donald Trump.
You mentioned Jones a minute ago, and InfoWars has got a story up on there that says Vice contributing editor and left-wing activist Molly Crabapple has become the latest public figure to joke about wanting to see Donald Trump assassinated. And I just, while you were speaking there, I thought, if I were looking at a voting machine and I'm walking out of the polling place and I say, hey, listen, watch out, because you may pick somebody and it'll flip to the other candidate before your very eyes. What is it about the left-wingers that it's like, who'd you vote for? Well, I punched mine for Trump. It's like, well, we don't care about that. It's like, well, but you would care if you were voting for Bernie freaking Sanders or one of these.
No, because it's an elitist, non-elitist phenomenon. Okay?
Yeah.
These people are elitist. It's hip to be for Bernie.
Yeah, I guess.
Bernie wants an 85% tax rate on all of us. Bernie would make us slaves to government. Bernie's right about Wall Street screwing us, but he has the wrong answer to the problem. We need more capitalism. He thinks the answer is more regulation.
Yeah.
We think the answer is a level playing ground.
Oh, sure.
I don't mind the guys in Wall Street making lots of money. That's good. I just want them to pay lots of taxes like you and I do.
Yeah, but what I'm getting at, Roger,
is it's off the IRS. So
right.
It is outrageous, the elitism of all of this, and the way they just dismiss anybody who's for Trump as, the poorly educated or white trash or bigot or Klansman. Look, Saturday Night Live has racists for Trump TV commercials.
Yeah.
This is Armageddon. This is the establishment trying to take down a guy who could shake up the direction of the country.
Yeah, but it's just so, but man, it's just so weird. It's so weird because as long as they're, sorry, what, we're walking all over each other. I'm sorry. You go ahead. Finish up. No, you do it. Go ahead. Finish up.
Yeah, no, the mainstream media is out of there overplaying their hand here. It's not working. The kind of scare tactics they've used in the past, at least so far, are not working.
All I'm getting at is that my perception of people who are on the, let's just use the old paradigm, on the right of things. I didn't say in the right. I said on the right of things. They would say, so you're telling me you voted for Sanders, but it flipped to Trump? They would not like that. But people on the left will be completely okay if somebody goes in and votes for Trump and it flips to Sanders or Clinton. They're okay with that. It's like, well, he's a Nazi anyway. And then you got this Molly Crabapple, whose real name apparently was Jennifer. Her real name is Jennifer Caban, C-A-B-A-N, according to the article on InfoWars here. She's the latest one to joke about Trump being assassinated. So the question is, why is it okay for them to behave that way? But when Trump uses off-color language, which he has done, and even for me it's a little bit strong, because I get a little wild with it sometimes. I try and keep in mind that at all times that I'm in somebody's home.
He gets a little overexcited, yes.
Yeah, he does. But why is it okay for them to behave that way, but when they get some of their own medicine, they start squealing?
No, okay, as you know, I have been banned last week or 2 weeks ago at CNN because of the demands of Media Matters for America, a left-wing pressure group financed by George Soros, who are apologists and sycophants of Hillary Clinton, for whom she can do no wrong. They actively are involved online, covering her crimes, spreading disinformation about the women who have made credible charges against Bill and Hillary Clinton for abuse. That's their mission. They're well paid to do it. They're not quite as clever as they think they are. But that said, this fellow Wilson from the Tallahassee area, Republican strategist, says online someone should put a bullet in Trump. Says it on Twitter, says it on Facebook, I believe. Says on Twitter that Ann Coulter is a prostitute and that she is having anal sex with Donald Trump. And he is an exalted spokesman on CNN. I am banned because I tell the truth about the Clintons, and this is the Clinton News Network, and also because I have questioned some of their on-air talent in terms of their qualifications to opine, specifically this woman, Ana Navarro. She claims to be a Republican strategist, but she's never strategized anything. She's an elitist friend of Jeb's. She got the job because she's a friend of Jeb's, and she says she's a friend of Marco's, although he tells me he doesn't particularly like her. She and her husband, or pardon me, her live-in boyfriend, have a special tax break for the property that they inhabit with the city of Miami. So they're living off the taxpayers. She is notoriously abusive, is the real thing. The makeup people, the hairstylists, the doormen, the technicians, the front desk people, the little people at CNN, they tell me she's a temper tantrum diva who thinks she's really important, and she abuses people. She yells at people. I don't like that. Yeah. So I have to, because I voiced these things, I have now been banned. So I kind of wear that like a badge of honor, because if I can be, you know, if I can be on Caravan at midnight, who cares about CNN?
Oh, bless you for saying that, man. Yeah, I'll tell you, speaking of people who are little divas, I was delighted to see Melissa Harris Perry get blown out of even an outfit like MSNBC. Apparently her stuff was too strong even for them. You may recall, folks, she's the one that claims that the children don't belong to the parents, and they belong to all of us. She teaches some BS course at Wake Forest University, you know, or maybe it's UNC at Wake Forest, I don't know, in Wake Forest, North Carolina. And I was really happy to see her get blown out. It's like, you're annoying. Goodbye. And you don't bring anything to the party. But maybe that's just me.
Look, I think the next few weeks here are going to tell us very much about the direction of our country. I think that Hillary will dispatch Bernie. I think that provides nothing but opportunity. Many of those Bernie Sanders voters, the ones who aren't hardcore leftists, just regular folks, working class folks who realize that Wall Street is screwing us, we have to win them over to Donald Trump if we're going to change this country, and that can be done. This is why the left keeps saying he's a racist and he's a bigot, to scare those people off, scare them from seeing their economic interest. Their economic interest is not sticking with Hillary. The idea that Hillary would reform Wall Street is laughable. Hillary is not a liberal or a progressive. She's a crony capitalist. I almost believe at this point that the right-left divide is really just a Hegelian distraction. It's a device they use to distract us from the fact that there's a small wealthy power elite that knows no ideology, that manipulates both left and right. And when they realize that George W. Bush has burned out his welcome, they go out and recruit Barack Obama. And after they figured the first George Bush didn't have the energy for a second term, they went out and recruited Yale graduate, Rhodes Scholar rapist, and former CIA operative William Jefferson Clinton, who is, as you know, recruited by the agency to spy on anti-war college groups in Europe in the run-up to the Vietnam War. So it's the same gang of people that have run the country into the ground, and Trump is the antithesis of this. We're going to see whether we can make America great again, whether we can get back our financial strength, rebuild our military, but stay away from an adventurous foreign policy. Look, I'm not an isolationist. I'm a non-interventionist. I realize that there's bad people in the world out there who mean us have no good wishes for us, who mean us harm. And I realize that there are instances when that has to be dealt with. But the Bush, Obama, Clinton policy has been to go looking for war and to stick our nose where it really doesn't belong because we can't identify our own national interest. Under Trump, I think a foreign policy would ask that question: how is getting involved in our interest? And then and only then take action to intervene abroad. It doesn't mean you go nowhere, but you're never anxious to send troops into the meat grinder. If you can read the lesson of history, why would you ever sell American troops to the Afghan front? You've seen the Russians and the Brits get chewed up there, and we chewed the Russians up there ourselves. Why would we turn around and step our foot in the very bear trap that we have set for our Russian adversaries when Reagan sucked them into Afghanistan to bankrupt their economy and to suck them dry? So they had to bring down the wall.
Yeah.
That's statementship.
Yeah, I'll tell you, my spontaneous, instant, otherwise gut-based response is we wanted control of the heroin. We want to control the poppy crops.
Yeah, yes, there's a big part of that. And let me say this also. I want to say a very special word of thanks to a number of people. First of all, the Pope. Your Holiness, thank you for putting Donald Trump over the top in the South Carolina primary. Here in the United States, we don't like to mix church and state. We have great respect for your religious institution, and we look to you for matters of faith. When it comes to law and politics and how we live in our government, as long as it is moral, it's our business. So I think he helped with many evangelicals, particularly who have a deep suspicion of papal Rome anyway, to help put him over the top. Next, the Chinese government announcing, "Don't you people dare elect Donald J. Trump." Thanks for that. Helps him pick up momentum. Then Vincenti Fox, the brother of a drug dealer, a guy whose government was the central bank for the cartel. He's criticizing Trump, saying he won't pay for the wall. We'll see about that. And then on top of it, now you have Mitt Romney, which must seem like a mosquito sting. Romney, who praises Trump, his business acumen, his Chinese trade views, his success only 3 years ago, now plunges a knife deeply in his back, saying that he's a fraud, a phony, and a buffoon. What happened in 3 years, Mitt? When it was your interest to embrace Trump, you gladly did so. And he did get on his knees and beg for an endorsement. He was on his knees. I know, I was a party to those discussions. Mitt Romney was on his knees begging Donald Trump for an endorsement. Remember, early in that contest, Trump, by raising the question of Barack Obama's birth certificate, without getting into that controversy, he still vaulted to first place in all of the polls, and that brought Mitt Romney a run-in.
Yeah, amazing. Folks, this book is worth the purchase price, if for, let alone the words that are in the book. I like pictures too. I really do. There's a picture of George H.W. Bush standing next to Clinton. If these guys don't look like a couple of wise guys. I mean, this is like straight out of a well-cast, very well-funded Hollywood picture. These guys look like exactly what they are.
And there's no question George W. Bush is far more involved, as I said earlier, with the Reagan assassination attempt than we know. The backstory here is very clear. Reagan has had Bush forced down him on as vice president, and Bush is pushing for control of crisis management, which gives him de facto control of all the intelligence services and our foreign policy and our covert operations. Al Haig wants to keep this power as Secretary of State for himself. This is an epic battle inside. When a gunman tries to kill Reagan, as you know, in the assassination attempt, the young man, John Hinckley Jr., is tied tightly to the Hinckley family of Colorado, previously of Houston, major financiers and close personal friends of the Bush family.
Yeah.
John Hinckley Sr., a financier of the campaigns of George Bush in 1964, 66, 70, and 80. The Dallas Morning News describes him as a big Reagan supporter and contributor. Mr. Hinckley has never given a dime to Ronald Reagan.
Is that right?
He is scheduled to have dinner with Neil Bush, the very Neil Bush who would later defraud U.S. taxpayers out of $1.5 billion. The same Neil Bush who was influence peddling with the U.S. government on behalf of a Chinese consortium in return for all the Chinese prostitutes he could eat. That Neil Bush. All of this in the Bush crime family, where he was busted with these ladies of the night supplied to him by the Chinese government. So these are the kind of people that we're dealing with. And the fact is, there's a second gunman perched above the door. You can see him very clearly in the photographs in the book. I've had them enhanced. The government would not release their photographs to me or any other journalist. I went to the original photographer whose photos were seized, and he had these X-rays. He had these negatives, and we have had them enhanced. You can see the second gunman. Hinckley fires from a crouching position, yet the bullet that hits Reagan is from above, consistent with the trajectory of this balcony. What's found in Reagan isn't a bullet at all. It's a sophisticated medical disc. It seems like some kind of high-tech intelligence weapon. It is most definitely not a bullet. The fact that they say one of Hinckley's bullets bounced off the door and hit Reagan, that describes the correct trajectory, because early on we were told by the government in their story that Reagan was hit from below. Then they changed it to above, consistent with what really happened.
Yep.
There is no nick or dent or blemish in the car door anywhere. So if a bullet grazed off it, where is the evidence of that?
Yep.
This was a power play by the Bush people to grab control. There's immediately a fight over the nuclear football. The Bush people try to grasp it before there's even a report of of Reagan's condition. Al Haig goes to the White House, has a press conference, and says, "The vice president is on his way here. Until he arrives, I'm in charge here." They edit that to an out-of-control Al Haig saying, "I'm in charge here." People say he's not vice president. What is he talking about? It destroys Haig's career.
Yep.
And George Bush, 3 days after Reagan can breathe again, signs the order giving him control of crisis management.
Yeah.
That's Iran-Contra. That's the millions in drugs that the Bush crime family sells and steals.
Good Lord, man. There's one more thing, because, Roger, the UN was Poppy's consolation prize from Nixon after losing the 1970 Senate race. That's George H.W. Bush, and there he sits. What do you think the chances are that Barack Obama is going to get a consolation prize of some sort, since he was the most miserable president maybe ever, at least visibly so? Invisibly, maybe some others were worse, but visibly, he's about the worst I've ever seen in my lifetime. What do you think the chances are this guy's going to wind up at the UN as Secretary General, possibly?
No, I don't think that's the gig for him. He doesn't want to work that hard. My guess is that Hillary will keep talking about appointing him to the Supreme Court. She'll use it as a card over and over again in the next election to try to re-energize the Obama base, and also to stop Obama from indicting her in the email scandal in which she is most definitely guilty. There's a preponderance of evidence in that case. It doesn't require intent. Criminal negligence is easily provable. She's indictable today. There's a preponderance of evidence. One wonders what the prosecutors, or in this case the FBI, is waiting for. On the other hand, I think in the end, she may, knowing too much about Benghazi and Valerie Jarrett's role, because I'm convinced that it's Jarrett who tells the rescue forces to stand down in Benghazi, and therefore we had mutual assured destruction. And the FBI director probably does not convince the Secretary of State to prosecute. Remember, the Attorney General to prosecute. Pardon me. Remember, the Attorney General Loretta Lynch would also like to go to the Supreme Court. So she's going to do whatever Barack Obama instructs her to do. This is a den of vipers. This is a political mess. We know that the Bushes we know the Clintons and the Obamas detest each other. The wives detest each other. The husbands detest each other. Barack Obama has told friends of mine he's tired of Bill Clinton lecturing him and sticking his finger in his face. Michelle Obama finds Hillary Clinton grabby and duplicitous. So there's no love lost here. On the other hand, they do have the future legacy of the Democratic Party that they have to consider.
Yeah. Roger, the first time I had and I mean this, the privilege of speaking with you was on Coast to Coast AM back in the day, and we were talking about, it was right around, that must have been, wasn't it right around the 50th anniversary? Wasn't that 2013? Exactly. I think it was.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We were on for 3 hours and we rock and rolled.
Yes, we did.
Laid out the case against LBJ. I mean, yes, the mob is involved. Yes, the Central Intelligence Agency is deeply involved. Yes, Big Texas Oil is involved. Yes, the military-industrial complex is involved. Yes, anti-Castro Cubans are being manipulated. But Lyndon Johnson's the indispensable man. He's the man with a tie to each one of those camps, each of whom has their own interest in the murder of John Kennedy. So The Man Who Killed Kennedy, the case against LBJ, is a New York Times bestseller, now in paperback, has 2 new chapters. I'm going to publish it, I think, again in a year with 3 additional chapters of incredible research that I've learned about the evil and duplicitous nature of the sociopath Lyndon Baines Johnson. If we ever had a Republican president, Republican Congress, I will move legislation to strip his name off of every federal building.
Please.
And I'm ready to go out with a hammer and a chisel and do the work myself.
Man, I want to get rid of LBJ Freeway, which we call LBJ, just if you get my drift. It's Highway 635 up here. And also the George Bush Freeway. I'd like to see the names of those people stripped from everything. In fact, I still want...
Look, several of the Bushes should be prosecuted for war crimes, and I think that day may come when we're able to strip George W. Bush's name off the freeway. Look, he's not some goofy noblesse oblige aristocrat preppy who seems kind of benign but mannerly. He's a cunning sociopath. He's been involved in drug dealing, drug trafficking. He's been involved in assassination. He has moved money around. He financed the Watergate break-in for Richard Nixon. This is also in the book. He wires himself a very lucrative Chinese oil deal when he's our envoy to China, because Kissinger and Nixon have him cut out of any meaningful dialogue. He's strictly ceremonial. He goes to dinners and cuts ribbons. So he spends his time lining his own pockets and laying low on Watergate, letting it blow over so he can come back as CIA director and ultimately candidate for president, vice president, and ultimately president of the United States, beginning a dynasty of crime, inserting his idiot son, who's bailed out by the Saudis in his failed business adventure Harkins, and of course the Bushes are benefiting from the millions the bin Laden family is running through Carlyle, who runs all their Saudi money. So it's an amazing tale, and it's not over. The fight goes on between Jeb trying to stop Bush, between Neil endorsing Cruz. The Bushes are right back in the news. Barbara Bush, drunk almost every day by 10, drinking quarts of vodka and orange juice, calling Republican leaders demanding that Donald Trump be crushed. That's an exact quote. One person I spoke to in Palm Beach spoke to Barbara, and that is the expression she used. She wants Trump crushed.
Yeah.
And then she rattled her pearls.
Yeah, well, good luck with that. All right. After the case against LBJ, the Man Who Killed Kennedy, the case against LBJ, then you did Nixon's Secrets, you did the Clintons' War on Women, now you've done Jeb and the Bush crime family. I have one last one-word question for you.
Yes.
Scalia.
Curious, troubling. As someone who has been around long enough to doubt the government's narrative in the cover story, I have serious questions. I'd like to see an autopsy. A number of the judge's very close friends have expressed this to me, although they're not saying so publicly out of respect for his family and his widow at this time. But there's deep suspicion. It's something I want to look at down the road. I have 2 projects that I'm going to enlighten you on. I have the unauthorized biography of Senator Cory Booker, the liberal Democrat senator from New Jersey. It's entitled The Moth, because he, like a moth, he alights on any opportunity for publicity, but then he never really does anything on the issue he talks about, which is a humdinger coming out just before the Democratic National Convention. In case anybody was thinking about putting Senator Booker on the ticket, they might want to read this expose of how he has enriched himself incredibly, how he doesn't even live in New Jersey, how he lives in Greenwich Village, and the story, a massive story of corruption and privilege and fraud, to be quite candid. Mm-hmm. And then, frankly, my next book, in which I examine the murder of John F. Kennedy Jr., because almost everything you've been told about his plane crash and death is false or embellished or cooked.
Yep.
And I found a number of troubling facts about his plane crash and a backstory of political intrigue. The truth is, John Kennedy was preparing to run for the United States Senate.
Yep.
And he was going to use it as a springboard to run for the presidency. And he wanted to be president to uncover who had murdered his father, something that burdened him his entire life. Remember that his mother and his father were both taking methamphetamine from Dr. Max Jacobson. This gave John Kennedy Jr. a very common respiratory problem that was caused when your parents are on meth. And therefore he was hampered, like Theodore Roosevelt, with bad health in his early years, which he overcame only through strenuous sports activity. Hockey, football, basketball, baseball. He played them all. Yeah. So he had confided to a number of New York Democrats who I interviewed that he was gearing up to run. And he was therefore in the way. When Hillary went out among Democratic chieftains to begin testing the water, a number of upstate bosses told her they were already committed to John Kennedy Jr., to which she scoffed, "Don't worry about that. That will take care of itself." Mm-hmm. Now, we know that John Kennedy's plane did not descend as if it lost an engine and crash. It blew up in midair. There are at least 2 witnesses to that.
Are you serious? It blew up midair?
There are 2 witnesses to that. He has a greater number of hours as a pilot than you've been told. He has a far greater number of hours on a simulator than you've been told.
Yeah.
Should have been able to fly in bad weather on instruments only, but here is the kicker. The weather conditions, as I have documented, are pristine. There are no vision impairments.
Well, even if there were, all he had to do was set his autopilot, go to his HSI, which is his horizontal situation indicator that Piper Saratoga certainly had right in the middle of the panel. Just all you have to do is call the tower and say, "I'm in trouble here. I need vectors to get in. I'm instrument rated, but I'm in deep stuff here." And all you do is just dial the thing to the degree. They go 20 degrees left. You just turn the knob. The plane, they could have brought him in almost 0-0. But everybody went with this what do you call it, death spiral? Where you just
there is no
graveyard spiral.
There's no death spiral unless it's after the explosion. Look,
right.
Immediately upon this plane going down, for the first time in U.S. history, the investigation is shifted from the FAA to the U.S. Air Force.
Oh, there you go.
Why? And in fact, even though radar tells us exactly where the plane remnants went down, the search begins hundreds of miles away. Why? It is not until Senator Ted Kennedy gets the President of the United States out of bed at 3 a.m. and says, "Mr. President, what the hell is going on? Why is there no search party looking for my nephew?" And Bill Clinton says, according to a source in Kennedy's office, "Yeah, we'll get right on it."
Now, last thing, because I know you got to go. If John Kennedy Jr. had been alive, there would be no Hillary Clinton.
Perhaps we don't know the vagaries of history. There are all kinds of small changes that would change anything. Look, Ronald Reagan ran for president in the 1968 convention. Actually, it was his first secret bid to become president. In a race against former Vice President Richard Nixon and Nelson Rockefeller, he got in the race late. He announced at the convention, and he maneuvered furtively among Southern delegates to try to cause a deadlock in which Nixon would fail on the first ballot, and the second ballot would turn to Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan was the overwhelming choice, indeed the glamour boy of most of the Nixon delegates in the South. And it was a good strategy. This has been airbrushed out of Reagan's biography. Nancy Reagan and Ronald Reagan say it never happened. I was there. It did happen. He lost by a mere 67 votes of stopping Reagan. Had he gotten 68 votes, there would have been no Watergate, a different outcome to the war in Vietnam, no Jimmy Carter, no Gerald Ford, no Bill Clinton, no George W. Bush. It would have changed the entire trajectory of history.
Yeah.
68 votes.
Wow, unbelievable. Roger, we admire you so much for what you do. You're a brilliant writer, and you're ticked off in exactly the right way. He's aggressive, and I repeat, he's brilliant. Come back on anytime you want to. All right.
Well, you can go to rogerstone.com to buy all the books we've talked about. You can go to Amazon. You can go to Barnes & Noble. If I don't say that, my publisher will kill me. Well, so I am delighted to be back with you again.
Well, it's good to have you here. And all of your the links to buy his books are in guest media. And look, if you're listening rather than watching, I want to give you this number. Get the area code in your mind and retire that so you can remember the rest of the numbers. It's area code 855. It's a toll-free number, but it's 855. Got it? All right. Here's the number. 245-4634. Like 245s, right? 245-4634 to report irregularities or voter fraud. And I feel pretty sure that we'll put up some of this onto a more public channel where anybody can get it, because that's what we do. Intrepid researcher, author, lecturer, and filmmaker, the one and only, yes, L.A. Marzulli. Welcome back, my friend. How are you?
Oh, what a great introduction. Great to be here, John B. Thanks.
You know what? It's so good to see you come on the program, see you on screen. I'm going to see you in person in a couple of weeks at Hear the Watchman. But
that's going to be great.
I mean, there's just sunshine blowing through the screen, man. It's good to see you. I mean,
there you go.
How's as the old expression goes, which I like to use, is this harkens back to the Stone Age. How's tricks? What's going on?
Things are good. Our new TV show, Politics, Prophecy, and a Supernatural Report, has launched from the first of the year. I do like 2 or 3 updates every week on a variety of different subjects, but we're getting ready to go live. Our first TV station will be in Little Rock, and we're excited about that, and that'll happen actually around sometime this month. Not sure the exact date yet, but we're gearing up, and the programs will be half-hour programs. And they'll be a little different than what most people are doing. You know, we've done 10 episodes, actually 9 episodes of the Watchers series. And we're working on 10 now. And I promise you, John B., when 10 comes out, it's through the roof. It's unprecedented stuff. But there's so much information. And, you know, we've sold, I don't know, maybe 150,000 DVDs in the course of the last 5 or 6 years with Watchers. Very small audience. And what we're trying to do is get the information out. So the TV show, well, like, I'll do the open, I might talk for 5 minutes, set the thing up, and then we'll cut to several segments in, let's say, Watchers 3, Fingerprints of a Supernatural. Maybe we'll talk about the Shroud of Turin, and then you'll see basically the dialogue between myself and Barry Schwartz, or myself and Dame Isabel Pixick about the Shroud of Turin. Then I'll do an out, and that's the show. So it's really kind of a different show, and we're excited by it.
All right, now there's going to be some new information, new stuff, new archaeological discoveries in the new one. So let's talk about those now. Oh, that's right, we can't talk about them now. So let's move on.
You know, I wish I could, but I can't.
No, you can't. I get it.
And there's also a book that goes with it. It's called Nephilim Chimeras, Nephilim Nightmares. We're still working on the title. Nephilim something, maybe just Nephilim Hybrids. And it'll be a short book, lots of pictures in that. There is some overlap, like always, between the DVD and the book, but the book covers different things than the DVD does. We're really excited about this because the information, again, we're out in the field, we're looking at artifacts, we're examining artifacts, we're testing artifacts, we're getting reports from people that are extremely disturbing. Some of those disturbing reports will be in Watchers 10 on film, where we can't even show the person's face. Wow. You have to disguise their voice.
Are you serious?
Because when they're coming forward with the information, they were tied to certain branches of, that's all I can tell you, of government agencies that they just can't come on the record. So we have to disguise, and look, we're not breaking any laws by doing this. They're the ones that are coming forward. It's not like national secrets. It's nothing like that. It's experiences that these two people, there's no collusion between them, had while in a certain country that we are presently at war with, and that should sort of tip my hand a little bit. But I don't mean to be so clandestine about this thing, but I just need to be. But I think when this information comes out, we'll get on the show and start talking about it, give you lots of pictures, and I think people will be blown away.
Yeah, I'll tell you. I don't know why this popped into my mind, but it did. I'm thinking, wow, if these people get their way sometime in the not too distant future, if they get their way, it's like you can get an internet hookup with a 14-foot tall Nephilim female. Talk about paranormal date. Yeah.
Okay.
All you can handle and way more. Trust me. As a matter of fact,
thank you.
you may be eaten quite literally. All
Yes,
right. Well.
exactly.
All right. Now let me ask you this: everything's all the rage now about EMPs. Is like the Iranians and the North Koreans. And what is it with this little putz, Kim Jong Un over there? He's either dropping mortar shells directly on somebody's head. That sounds like something somebody made up. I want no trace of him whatsoever, including his hair. I think that was the quote. So they zeroed in this mortar, and the mortar shell landed right on his head, and that was it. You know, that's. I mean, what a freak. But why does this little dude have so much? Why is anybody even paying attention to him, other than the fact that Seoul is down south a ways from where he hangs?
Well, that's a really interesting question. And of course, the problem is North Korea has been divided for decades and continues to be. And the Kim Jong-un is literally treated as a living god. I mean, that's how the populace treat this maniac. North Korea, you can make a real strong case that what we saw in Auschwitz and Bergen-Belsen with the Nazis and the concentration camps just migrated. We've got the gulags under the former Soviet Union. We got the gulags in China. The gulags are there. The concentration camps are there in North Korea. I mean, I've seen pictures, and it's absolutely horrific, the type of brutality and torture that goes on a daily basis. I mean, inmates will fight over a lizard, literally fight over a lizard. Starvation is rampant. The death toll is through the roof. And yet, it's funny how how the political leaders of the world, this might be a rabbit trail, but Bush just had to get in there into Iraq. He just had to coalition the evil and all this stuff. No one did doodly squat with North Korea. And Saddam, as brutal and as crazed as he was, and I'm not, you can't justify Saddam's evil by pointing to a greater evil in North Korea. Both regimes were incredibly repressive and incredibly evil. The United Nations is a joke because they know of the starvation that happens in North Korea. No one does anything. And it's a brutal regime over there. However, this nutcase, Kim Jong-un, and he is a nutcase, by the way, they've got, while we were all watching the Super Bowl and the last machinations of Peyton Manning, they sent up a satellite, which was successful. And that satellite orbits the Earth. Well, now they've got small nuclear-tipped missiles. And the idea is they can send up another satellite with a nuclear-tipped missile. That, my friend, is an EMP, electromagnetic pulse weapon. If they detonate that thing over the heartland, Oklahoma City, it sets out a pulse weapon. I actually wrote about this in my book, Days of Chaos. And maybe I should change the title because that people go, oh my gosh, why do I want to read this? Because you need to arm yourself with what's going on. Call me a fearmonger, but you tell me what we're supposed to do with Kim Jong-un, and that's only the tip of the iceberg. The bottom line is that they detonate this thing over Oklahoma City, it sets out a magnetic pulse wave. Anything with an off and on switch ceases to function, and it doesn't come back online maybe for years. I mean, no one really knows how badly the infrastructure, the electrical infrastructure, would be damaged. But what most people don't understand, when you go to a grocery store, any grocery store, the shelves are only stocked 4 or 5 cans back. Don't believe me? Go there yourself and check it out. That's all they have. They have like 4 or 5 cans, maybe 6. That's it on the shelf. Same thing when the refrigerators go down, it's all over. Your market will be picked clean in less than 12 hours in an event like that. And then when people get hungry, we look at anarchy. Jade Helm, in my opinion, in 2015, was a dry run to prepare because our government knows something's up. They know, but they can't stop everything. They know that. And so they're positioning themselves for a full-blown riot. And that can happen a variety of ways. The collapse of a dollar would certainly do it. An EMP would certainly do it. I mean, any type of a nuclear event in this country would cause immediate mass panic. So, we're in a really tumultuous, tenuous time. And what amazes me is a lot of people, I mean, my critics especially, will accuse me of being a fear-mongering. Okay, so let me get this straight. I'm fear-mongering, but Kim Jong-un is threatening the United States with nuclear missiles. Where am I going wrong? The Iranians launched two missiles in the last 48 hours, with "Death to Israel" scribbled on the side of them. I'm not making this stuff up.
Yeah.
But I'm a fearmongerer? No, I'm a reporter. I'm a watchman. I am reporting to you what is going on in the world. If you don't want to look at it, you are an ostrich person. That's what you are.
Yeah.
Your head's in the sand, and you don't have a clue as to what is going on.
Yeah, the ostrich people are, in my opinion, much worse than even the lettuce people, if you get my drift, you know. They really are, these damn lettuce people. You know, L.A., I've got that scent in my nostrils. Yes, I'm sure of it. It's a rat. And what do you think the chances are that this is just disinformatia, setting this guy up to look like the bad guy? I mean, seriously, the North Koreans are a threat against the United States. Oh, really? China won't do anything about it. Iran, no, we must wipe out Israel. You know, well, I mean, somebody wrote rock and roll on the inside of some jet parts they sent over from Bulgaria some years ago. It's like there weren't any guitars nor strings on board. So what I'm saying is, what if this is what if they're setting this guy up to look like the bad guy when in fact he's got nothing to do with it, let alone the capability to carry it out even if he wanted to, because some of our guys are going to carry it out. I got a kind of a disturbing text message earlier from a guy who said a friend of a friend went out to one of the states out west. I'll just leave it at that because I want to leave him completely neutral. Sure. And this person kind of connects with an alphabet outfit, if you get my drift, who
Sure.
says, yeah, I'm already making plans to cover up. Stuff is approaching fan now. Don't really know what form it's going to take. Maybe this is all this stuff about asteroids coming close to the Earth and this and that. That may be just another piece of distracting promotion to take attention away from what's really going to happen. But apparently, I mean, this is not somebody who, you know, gets drunk and coked up at some party, and then we've all seen them. Okay, folks, seriously, we've all seen them. They go into this. They're locked up. They're about to tell you about the 1,000 ninjas they have known, or something on that level. They're ready to tell you, but there is no story, so they never get to the story. People are laughing out there right now. I know they are. They're laughing in the studio here because everybody has seen a person like this, but this is not one of those stories. There are people that we know, we're 3 deep from them, which is exactly the way I like it, unless I can get 4 deep, who are gravely concerned about things that are coming our way. But the problem is nobody will even offer an opinion and say, yes, I definitely think it's what it is. These people are bright people. They're saying, we're sure something's coming. None of them are prepared to offer an opinion on what it may be. And it makes me nuts.
Well, and all we can do is extrapolate from the limited intel that any of us get. Look, I've got an interview with a man who I can't say the guy's name, but he was just in Iran for a period of time, and he's got some intel that he wants to share with me, and we'll do a Skype interview with him, but we can't. I mean, I can't show the guy's face, so you'll just hear the audio of it. And basically, what he's saying is that the regime in Iran are radicals. What I mean by that, there are 2 sects of Islam: Sunni, which is the predominant majority of Islam, and that is headed by Saudi Arabia, and most of the Gulf states are Sunni Muslim. But the alternative to that, the other sect of Islam, are Shia Muslims. Iran is really the headquarters, the head of the snake, as far as the Shia Islamic sect, and that creates the Islamic crescent, the Shia crescent, going from Lebanon with Hezbollah, who are a proxy army of Iran, into Syria. Bashar al-Assad is being propped up again by the Iranians, down into northern part of Iraq, which again is tied into the Shia crescent. Then Iran itself, then finally swinging over to Yemen, another proxy army. That's called the Shia crescent. That's going full tilt boogie, even as we speak. I mean, the wars and the behind the scenes nonsense is happening over there. Well, the intel that we're getting this afternoon from this person is stating that a lot of radical hardliners are in the government who believe, get this now, who believe in an apocalyptic vision of the end times. In other words, according to Shia Islam, their eschatology, their end time page, in order for the Imam Mahdi, the Mahdi, to come back, he only can come back in a time of complete chaos. And this is what's really going on. This is the problem when you get a guy like John Kerry who goes over there, and I've never talked to John Kerry, I'm more than likely never will. I have no idea of whether he understands Shia eschatology. I have no idea. But that's what comes into play. Mahmoud Ahmadinejad was a hardliner. He believed in the coming of the Mahdi, so much so that he actually, updated the shrine where this well is, spent millions of dollars renovating and updating it, because out of this well, the Mahdi is supposed to ascend. Some people believe that the Mahdi is already there. So this eschatological fervor is what is driving the entire Iranian military exercises that we see. I mean, and what's interesting is the majority of the Iranian people don't want anything to do with this stuff. And we talk about this in Watchers 9. We have this incredible interview with a pastor. Again, his face is blocked out, his voice is disguised. We didn't even know his real name. This guy came to us through the Underground Railroad type thing. We have no idea what the guy's real name is. And he was telling us that the greatest threat to the mullahs in Iran are Christians, because more and more people who follow Islam, Muslims, are converting to Christianity. What's happening is Jesus is appearing in dreams and visions. All sorts of supernatural stuff is going on, and people are converting. And the government has now placed Christianity as the #1 threat. Recently, just this week, there was an article about how Iran is cracking down over the home churches all through their country. They're terrified of it because they don't know how to deal with it. And the reason why they don't know how to deal with it is because these people who are converting experience a change of life. Just like what happened to me 36 years ago when I became born again, spirit-filled, my life completely turned upside down. People didn't know who I was. The people I used to keep company with, and I've lost touch, unfortunately, but 36 years ago, they just looked at me like, well, who are you? Why aren't you using the F-bomb every 3 words, right? And so that's where we're at, and that's what's going on. And it's happening in Iran, even as we speak.
L.A., seriously, I'm momentarily stumped for a follow-up question after that incredible infusion that you just laid on everybody. All right, let me ask you this then. What about the blood moons? People are saying, oh, the blood moons, and they're saying, oh, don't pay any attention to the blood moons. It's like, how can you not pay attention to a blood moon?
It just amazes me how there are certain people that make a big to-do about this. Like, well, you can't be looking at the blood moons because I said so. It's like, why can't I? I mean, that's a sign in the heavens. I mean, am I going to base my entire life on the 4 blood moons? No. Am I going to look at it and see if anything happens with the 4 blood moons? Is it just business as usual? Did anything happen at the tail end of 2015 that is not business as usual? Yeah. And this is what amazes me. I mean, the naysayers are sitting there, oh, look at the blood moons, because I said so. And meanwhile, 2 things happened at the end of 2015, which I believe literally are unprecedented. The first thing is that the Russians came in full force into the Middle East. Unprecedented. Unprecedented. And they didn't come in with a couple of advisors, tanks, military people, ships, surface-to-air missile, the whole deal. I mean, that's what they are there. Putin is there. And what is Obama doing? Leading from behind. But I digress. That's the first thing, which is absolutely an unprecedented event. And we are looking, in my opinion, at the beginnings of World War III. That's where we are. On the whole Turkish border with Syria, the Russians are there. I mean, this whole thing, it doesn't take much. And everybody's sort of jockeying for position. Now the Saudis are joining the fray with their military exercise, the largest military exercise in Middle Eastern history, called Northern Thunder. Where do you think they're going to go with that? They're practicing it even as we speak in the northern part of Saudi Arabia. It's just a hop, skip, and a jump into Syria. They want to take out Bashar al-Assad. The Russians are backing Bashar al-Assad. The Iranians are aligned with the Russians. The United States and the West are aligned with the Saudi Arabians. This is World War III. It's Shia against Sunni Muslim. and the world powers are aligned that way. In the middle of this, of course, is the little nation of Israel, which is kind of looking around, going like they're surrounded by some pretty rough people. That's the first thing. The fact that the Russians have entered the Middle Eastern fray, absolutely unprecedented. Unprecedented. Not since the Cold War have we seen any type of military maneuver like that with the Russians. The second dynamic event which happened, and again, this is unprecedented. We know that Charles Martel at the Battle of Tours turned back the Islamic hordes. We also know that the fighting at the gates of Vienna turned the Islamic hordes back from entering into Europe from the east. All that changed. In 2015, over 1 million, upwards of 1 million, and some people put the number higher, so-called refugees came into Europe. Finally, even Pope Francis is calling it an Islamic invasion, because that's what it is. It is an invasion. The fact that Merkel would open her arms and allow these people to come into her country, it's national suicide. And only too late, people now realize, the French are realizing it, the Swedes are realizing it, the Greeks, everybody's realizing it. Oh my gosh, what have we done? And these people don't want to assimilate. They're not thankful. Some of them are, but many of them aren't. They want Sharia law. They want handouts. The whole idea of the refugees, which no one wants to talk about, which seems to be an epidemic.
Yes.
And I saw this one absolutely ridiculous. I mean, it was laughable. If it wasn't, it's real. So the first thing you want to do is cry, because you realize how far down the rabbit hole the political correct nonsense has gotten. It was a movie created by, I think, the Swedish government, showing if a woman was accosted by a Muslim man who wanted to grope her, what she was supposed to do. It's laughable. She goes like this. She puts out her hand defiantly.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
and she does it like 3 times like this, and you sit there and you go, oh yeah, that guy's really going to respect that. And I mean, this is what the government comes up with, and it's just, my head spins. So you've got 2 events that happened on this planet which are unprecedented. The Russians invading the Middle East, and this influx of Muslims into Europe, which is an invasion force. You can't assimilate, and the people know it. The people are up in arms. Many of the people in these countries are absolutely up in arms. And of course, they're immediately, just like they are here in this country, labeled Islamophobes. Well, there was an interesting article by a Saudi Arabian woman who lives, I think, in Qatar. So, and the reason why she lives in Qatar, because Saudi Arabia is incredibly oppressive to women. Full burqas, the whole thing.
Oh, yeah.
Can't go anywhere, can't drive, whole deal. So she's in Qatar, and she wrote this really pithy article, and I commented on it on a blog or a radio show somewhere. And basically, what she said was this: what would happen if Christians came into our country and wanted to set up churches? We wouldn't allow that. What would happen if Christians came into our country and told us we were infidels unless we converted to Christianity? We were going to be killed. What would happen if Christians came into our country and strapped bombs onto themselves and just blew up innocent people? And, all she did was reverse what is going on all through Europe, what is going on in this country, and there it is. I mean, it's just glaring. It's just glaring. And yet, if you say anything, somehow you're an Islamophobe. Trump talks about, hey, maybe we should halt immigration, and Hillary Clinton, and I don't know what your political persuasion is, Hillary Clinton goes, we have to be a nation that includes people. Hillary, wait a minute. I mean, I get all that. I want to be inclusive, but maybe we should just stop for a minute and stop bringing in people from countries which practice jihad. I mean, is anyone there? Is anyone there up there? Hello, Hillary. I mean, seriously. And that's what we're up against here. I mean, this is a real threat. I'm like, what, an hour and a half, 2 hours from San Bernardino out here? I mean, 14 people were gunned down by a couple of nutcases, jihad and Allahu Akbar. It ain't going away. And the fact that the southern border is still porous and Obama is letting thousands of people, we have no idea who's coming in this country. There's no way to vet anybody who Obama's let in, and he's already let in thousands of people from the Middle East. All this is under the radar. All this, in my opinion, done completely illegally. I mean, in some ways, it's impeachable offenses. You're allowing terrorists to come into the country. Why would you do that? unless your goal is to break the back of the country out of chaos order. And isn't it interesting? And I'll just close this little rant by saying this. Look, I'm not a big Donald Trump fan. I'm not. I find him bombastic. He's arrogant. I get all that. But he's saying the things that resonate with many Americans. He is. And the fact that people compare him to Hitler, you know, why don't you read some history books before you compare him?
Oh, that's that dumbass Nieto in Mexico. Forget about him.
It's just a straw man argument. Comparing Trump to Hitler is just absolute nonsense. Study your history. But that's what, you know, the left will do, this ridiculous rhetoric to try to, you know, up the ante with this thing. Well, you know, Trump is saying close the borders, and he's resonating with the American people. Well, he's also ahead in the polls, and I'm going to predict, and I'm not a prophet, that he will win in Ohio and in Florida. Meanwhile, the super PAC, $50 million, all these anti-Trump ads, it ain't doing anything. People aren't stupid, and they know what's going on here. They know who's paying for it because of the internet, and they know what's happening here. Just today, over 50 private jets with their occupants met at a little island off the coast of Georgia. Why? To stop Trump. And who are those people in the 50 jets? They're the people that control this country. That's part of the shadow government. Make no mistake about that, folks. That is the shadow government. Those are the people that don't want Trump in because they know if Trump gets in, he's going to start cleaning house. Like, you know, there was an exchange between Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who, you know, will abort anything all day long, no matter what.
Well, she's proof positive that
she's yeah.
Yeah, it's an Debbie Wasserman Schultz. I'm sorry, you were saying something, and like a rude alpha hole, I jumped in on you. I didn't mean to. That is one of the most nauseating human beings I've ever seen.
I agree.
That person is proof positive that pregnancy can result from sodomy. I do not like this person at all. Vicious, nasty individual,
vicious.
And just
vicious and nasty.
Ugh.
Yeah. With a little plastic smile, you know. And she, you know, she was just blasting the GOP, and we're going to elect, you know, Hillary because Hillary, you know, we have to continue the 8 years of employment and equal this. And I'm going, let me see, there's 92 million people out of the workforce. We have over 60 million people on food stamps, and you're trying to applaud this as a good thing? Obama trade, a good thing? You're trying to tell us Obamacare is a good thing? I mean, are you kidding me? This country's going into dogs, and all Hillary will do is create even more nonsense. So what was interesting is Megyn Kelly, who I don't really particularly like either, but Kelly holds Debbie Wasserman's feet to the fire, and she goes, well, at least our candidates on the GOP side don't face an indictment. And that immediately blew Wasserman Schultz. You could watch her whole countenance just go, boing. She didn't expect that. You know, that was like, boom, a little stun to the nose there. She was immediately taken aback by this. And, you know, she, of course, tap danced around the thing. Oh, that won't happen. You know what? Hillary Clinton may be indicted. And she needs to be indicted. Not only for the emails, but because she lied, in my opinion, she lied about Benghazi. I mean, you've got people standing up and saying that she lied over and over and over again. People who lost their loved ones at Benghazi, the mothers, you know, coming on the record, and yet somehow she's given a pass. Somehow it's okay. It's not okay. And I hope she is indicted. If she's guilty, then, you know, she should serve time. That's how it should work. But the woman, look, I'm all for grace and mercy. I get it. But if there's stuff that's going on here, she needs to be indicted. And this is why they're meeting down in that little island. Because they know if Trump gets in, he's not going to play ball. You know, they're not going to bring him to a back room and show him, you know, there's a Zapruder film with Kennedy's head being blown off and saying, you know, Donald, you cross off this. They know they can't do that because Trump can hire whoever he needs to hire, and he's already done it to protect him. And the fact that, you know, isn't it funny how someone was whining because their reporter was yanked, a female reporter was pulled by the arm as Trump was leaving. These guys are being paid to protect the Donald because they know they're going to try to kill him. And so this little Weasley reporter whining because she's moved out of the way as Trump is exiting. Look, if it's Obama, the same thing would happen. But no one whines when it's Obama. But that's what these guys do. You know, and they call, oh, Trump is being surrounded by his goons. Well, what about Obama and Obama's goons? It's okay for the left to be surrounded by their goons. It's okay for Hillary Clinton to be surrounded by 8 bodyguards who are armed with automatic weapons. But God forbid I have an automatic weapon, right? Because I live in the communist state of California. And this is where we are. It's duplicity on steroids. You know, do as I say, not as I do.
Say, you're on fire.
Ruff.
Yeah, no, you really are. We had Roger Stone on earlier. He's got a new book out called Jeb and the Bush crime family. And you start reading this stuff, and you see the photograph he got from Getty that shows you can see it's circled there on the photograph where the hidden elevated gunman was that actually hit Ronald Reagan, because he states in there that John Hinckley fired 5 times so he didn't hit anybody. Well, this other guy did hit somebody, and it did go at a downward trajectory and all that. I thought that was interesting at the time, and yeah, he's jacked up about it too. The whole point is incredulity that these people are so protected, so Teflon coated, so law proof that nobody gets prosecuted. How do you? I come back to the same question, L.A., the same one. Trust me, folks, nobody's sicker of it than I am. I'm sick of asking this question. How do you get anything done outside of a full-blown, real no-kidding revolution if no one will follow the law?
Well, I think what's going to happen are a couple of things here. It's like they know if they take Trump out, if something happens to Trump, it'll be a national riot. They know that because people aren't stupid anymore. They're going to have to shut down the internet because, I mean, look, Justice Scalia, right? That whole deal. Nothing to worry about here, folks. Keep moving, keep moving. There was a shot that I actually did this clip, and I did a TV show on it. You can go on ppsreport.com and see it for yourself. It talks about Justice Scalia. And Obama is doing this speech, and he goes, you know, many of you are in your last term of office, and we're trying to do things to help our constituents and those who elected us here, passing new laws, making the schools better, equipping people to retrain, appointing new judges. And then the audience laughs, and Obama snickers, and the facial expression, I mean, it's like he goes like this. He does it twice.
Oh yeah, we ran it. We ran it.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
I mean, why would anybody, especially the president of the United States, why would he do that? Unless he has an agenda. Unless he knows something perhaps that maybe we don't know. I don't know. I'm not in Obama's head. I don't want to be in his head. No. But I found that really, really disturbing that he would react to Justice Scalia's. And of course, it's all okay. Oh, it's natural causes. But, oh, by the way, no autopsy. Oh, the coroner didn't show up. And, you'll never know what really happened because we embalmed the body. It's kind of like, when Osama bin Laden is killed, right?
We
have to bury his body at sea, not to offend our Muslim brotherhood.
Yeah,
what?
Right. Yeah, right.
I mean, well, who do we know? It wasn't Osama. Osama probably died in Iran literally years ago. That's what my intel said. He died of kidney failure 6 years ago. Bhutto might have been assassinated because she actually went on the record a few months before she was assassinated. Isn't that interesting? Stating that, Osama bin Laden was, died several years ago in Iran from kidney failure. Yeah. And the intel that I got, that's where he died. And he was out of there. So this guy is a boogeyman. And isn't it interesting? It's the typical wag the dog thing. He's shot. And all of a sudden, the cameras roll around the White House, and there's this spontaneous celebration around the White House. Yay, they got the boogeyman. But we buried his body at sea. It's the same deal. So we'll never know what happened with Scalia. And now it comes out several weeks later that he's part of my back. I've got this thing on my back. That's why I keep fidgeting in my chair. But Scalia, it comes out he's part of this secret hunting society to St. Umberto or something. It's like, it's like, what? And then Newt Gingrich, you can't make this stuff up. It's just like the secret society, hunting society of St. Umberto. It's like, how do I join that? You can't. So don't even think about it. Newt Gingrich is on with Bill O'Reilly. And whether Gingrich did this deliberately or it slipped out, I don't know. I'd love to call Newt and have a conversation with him. Newt's a brilliant guy. But he's part of, he's part of the whole in-party, who knows, right? Who knows who's tied and who isn't. They've all been to Bohemian Grove, and That in itself is another 3-hour conversation. But Newt comes out, and we did a clip on this. There's a whole TV program on ppsreport.com about Newt Gingrich saying that the reason why they don't like the Donald, quote, is because he's not part of the club. He didn't go through the initiation rites. He's not part of a secret society. I mean, there it is. So now what is Newt going to do? He's going to backpedal from that? And, well, that's not what I really meant. Well, what did you really mean? Secret society, didn't do the initiations, not part of the club, and this is why the 50 people in the private jets are meeting on the island, because Donald is not part of the secret society, Bohemian Grove nonsense that we'll be meeting again very shortly here. And this is what the American people, shows like yours, shows like, Alex Jones, all the internet stuff, it's all there. And yet people like us, or we're on the fringe, I'll wear my tinfoil hat. Now I got it here somewhere. Hold on.
All right, wait a minute. That's a second mention of Alex Jones and InfoWars. So look, I'm going to have to deliver a message at this point because you and Roger Stone have both compelled it. Jones, I liked you. You dumped me when I left Coast to Coast AM. Was that political?
Wow.
Ring me, pal, or you know the rest of the sentence. Okay? There we go. There, I'm done. That's my message.
Good message, pithy, as they say.
Yeah, either ring me or yeah.
We're just in this window of time where, I mean, it's not a democracy anymore. I mean, Bernie Sanders wins, and I'm not a big fan of Bernie Sanders. Please don't misunderstand me. The guy's a communist.
Idiot.
For crying out loud.
Yeah.
I mean, 50 years ago, he would have been run out on a rail. Now all the young kids who don't understand anything because they're not taught anything in the schools anymore. Oh, yeah, Bernie Sanders, free stuff. Oh, that's what I like, free education. Well, who's going to pay the professors? Who's going to pay the janitor to clean up the rooms every night? Where's that money going to come from? Oh, the taxpayer. Wait a minute. I'm the taxpayer. I'm already taxed to death. I'm a small businessman. All I do is this, pay out. In fact, I'm being audited for 2013 because we actually made some money in 2013. And I lawyered up. And I said, what's going on here? And the lawyer said, well, they're being really aggressive with you. Well, gee, I wonder why. Maybe it's because of the stuff we put out constantly, which is anti-Obama. I don't know. I hope not. I would like to think that I'm just being audited because my accountant screwed up and we didn't pay enough money. But I mean, how much money is enough? When you take so much money from the middle class, when you penalize the entrepreneur, I got my own publishing company, when you penalize the entrepreneur for going out and being successful to the point where I have to borrow money in 2014 to do my next project and then cross my fingers and hope that we make a profit to pay back, which we did, to pay back the loan and keep going. That's not right. If I wasn't taxed so onerously, I could have kept that money and wouldn't have had to borrow. That's where we are. There are so many businesses which are closing and folding their doors because of the onerous taxes, and yet Bernie Sanders says he wants to tax us more and free stuff. So anyway, back to the point. Sanders wins in Michigan last night, but he doesn't get the delegates. He doesn't get the delegates because the whole thing, is all in the backroom stuff and the super delegates. And well, your vote really doesn't count because I say so. The whole frickin' system, when Carly Fiorina, who I really respect, a brilliant woman.
Yeah, she is actually.
She's acerbic, but she's brilliant and very vocal and very, very articulate. She said when she left, her parting words, the system is rigged. There you go. The system is rigged. And she's right. The system is rigged. And unless we go in and clean house, and I mean clean house, we voted all the Republicans in the Senate and the House, nothing changed. Why? Because nothing will change. Mitch McConnell is in Obama's pocket. They finally got rid of Weeping Boehner, who cried every 5 minutes over nothing, who continued to pass more and more and more big spending bills. Now they got Paul Ryan, which is the same nonsense. Nothing changes. They need to, a couple of things we could do in this country without a full-blown revolution. And this is what needs to be done. And it's real simple. Real simple. You limit every politician to 2 terms. That's it. Now, if you're a congressman, you can only do 2 terms. Senator, 2 terms. You can run for president if you're a senator, or you can run for Congress. But you only get 2 terms. That's it. You can't go from Senate to Congress and back to Senate again. You can't do the House of Representatives back to Senate. You can't do that. You get 2 terms and then you clean house. What that does is it abolishes guys like McCain, who's been in there as God knows, he's probably born there for all I know.
Yeah, useless.
I mean, McCain, John Kerry. John Swiftboat Kerry, I mean, these guys have permanent residences. They don't have to go home. I mean, this is where they live, for crying out loud. Nancy Pelosi, who votes for Obamacare, we have to pass the bill before we can read the bill? That's a direct quote. I mean, she wouldn't be there anymore. And that's what we need to do. And the second thing you do is you eliminate all lobbyists. You make lobbying a public official a crime. You make it a felony. That's what you do. And you get rid of the lobbyists who are always, well, we'll give you this, this, and this if you pass this bill, and all the pork that goes in the bills. 2 terms, that's it. 2 terms, no lobbyists. That's what you do. The third thing you do is you abolish the Federal Reserve and the IRS. You go to a flat tax system of 15, 16%, flat tax, period. No IRS, and you abolish the Federal Reserve, and you go back on the gold standard. Now, if you did that, the country would change for the better, guaranteed. Because now you're back to constitutional practices which happened, 250 years ago or thereabouts, when we won the revolution and the country was brand new. But they won't do that because that's not in the interest of the fat cats at the top. It's not at the interest of big business and Wall Street and everything else. And all these guys, look, I'm not a big fan of Wall Street. I'm not a big fan of big banking. If they just did these things, the country would change. The country would change.
Well, I got to tell you that you've said many of the same things that I have said over these slightly over 2 years that we've been on this program, and the ones before. Without term limits, nothing will change. That's why we have a criminal cabal in place now, because people are people. They're tempted by things. They are subject to temptation. And there is no greater temptation than money, because money is just the lubricant for the machinery of whatever you want that machine to do.
That's right.
But it's just the same old thing. I've said this many times. Drink want more drink, drug want more drug, money want more money, power want more power. That's just how people are. So I mean, it's human nature. But I think Katharine Hepburn said it to Bogart. Human nature is what we're put here on Earth to overcome. But it seems to be quite a stretch to do such a thing. They can't resist it. And then once the machinery is put into place that keeps them in power, and when there is the promise of grand financial enrichment, more enrichment the longer they stay in, I mean, what exactly is the motivation to quit? There is none.
Power, money, prestige, perks. You become an elitist, and that's what these people become. I'll never forget the clip I saw with the former senator of Pennsylvania, Arlen Specter, the originator, the orchestrator of the so-called magic bullet theory. Thank you, Arlen, for that wag the dog scenario.
Yeah.
And Arlen. This is when he wasn't reelected, and shortly after he passed away. And, he's been there in the Senate for years, and he's at a town hall meeting in Pennsylvania someplace. And the people have had it up to here. And he's trying to restore calm. No, wait a minute, everyone. He's trying to act like he's some grand poobah. And basically everybody's just going, you're so full of it. We don't believe a thing you're saying. And, of course, he wasn't elected in the next term, in next election cycle. I'll never forget it because, he acted like he was some great, statesman. And how dare you not heed my admonishment to quiet and sit and listen to me. It's like people just went, we're tired of listening to you because all you do is you lie and you say things and you're not for us. It's not a democracy anymore. And, people will hear that and go, oh, LA, you're once again fear-mongering, or you're look, just look up what happened in Michigan. Sanders wins, but he doesn't get the delegates. Some of them go to Hillary. That's not the way the game is played. He's supposed to get the delegates, but because of the way they manipulate everything with the super delegates and, all this other non-stuff and the backroom deals, Hillary is going to be the nominee. And we'll see how far that goes. She's part of the Good Old Boy Network.
Yeah. Do you mind if I read a quote from John Adams? There is nothing which I dread so much as a division of the republic into 2 great parties, each arranged under its leader. and concerting measures in opposition to each other. This, in my humble apprehension, is to be dreaded as the greatest political evil under our Constitution. George Washington agreed. George Washington. He's the fellow that morons out in America land, they just can't figure out who is Washington named after.
I know.
Is it
That's
the Washington State, Washington, D.C.? These dumbasses think that Martin Luther King is the first black guy on the moon. L.A.? Seriously, Dice is out there putting them on all the time. Now, granted, he probably, doesn't include the geniuses, but he does sometimes. But anyway, this is what Washington said. The alternate domination of one faction over another, sharpened by the spirit of revenge natural to party dissension, which in different ages and countries has perpetuated the most horrid enormities, is itself a frightful despotism. But this leads at length to a more formal and permanent despotism. The disorders and miseries which result gradually incline the minds of men to seek security and repose in the absolute power of an individual, and sooner or later the chief of some prevailing faction, more able or more fortunate than his competitors, turns this disposition to the purposes of his own elevation on the ruins of public liberty, without looking forward to an extremity of this kind which nevertheless ought not to be entirely out of sight. The common and continual mischiefs of the spirit of party are sufficient to make it the interest and duty of a wise people to discourage and restrain it. Folks, I'm going to say this again. People giving me grief about going up to CPAC to see what's going on up there. I go and see things for myself.
That's it.
I grab my thermometer, both types in some cases, and I take the temperature so that I know what I'm talking about when I get back. Do you really believe for one moment that I'm all right with the two-party system? Have you paid no attention to me whatsoever when I say you have to infiltrate your enemy? You cannot just hit it straight on. The enemy is too strong. You have to get into it. If the which third-party candidate had a snowball's chance in hell of being successful? Ron Paul? Who's that guy? Ralph Nader? Lyndon LaRouche? Answer, no, none of them. It comes down to what? Republicans and Democrats. Before your eyes, you see the parties have become one. It's just the Democrat Party is slightly more idiotic than the Republican Party, but frankly, gay on both sides, graft on both sides, lobbyists on both sides. It's merged into one. Do you seriously believe that I think the two-party system is okay? Do you really believe? I'm not telling you, I'm asking you. Do you really believe that I don't see this for what it is? L.A., we actually had some people, I don't know, half a dozen or so, decide that they're going to quit Caravan to midnight because this John B. Wells guy. He's been compromised. He goes along with these politicians and these two parties. Is like, really? Are you asking me to believe, after all of the things that have been said on this program, are you asking me to believe you are so stupid that you believe such a thing? If you are, then there's nothing more I can do for you. Ignorance can be cured, stupidity is permanent, and you are welcome to leave. And good luck. Okay, that's my story. I'm sticking to it. Okay, where were we? Sorry.
Oops.
No oops. That's it. If you don't tell it like it is, then I guess it doesn't get told, or if it does get told, then it's false.
Bingo.
I'm not doing it. I'm just not doing it. If somebody asks me a question, I'll either tell them the truth or I won't answer. And the reason I won't answer is because they can't handle the truth. And the fact is that while that's a, wacky little catchphrase that Jack Nicholson popularized in Men of Honor and all that, you can't handle the truth. Well, some people really can't. It's called denial. Stand by. That we have a president that was, he won the hearts of the people. He's going to fundamentally transform America and make it so nice. No one's feelings will be hurt. Everyone will be fed and everything will be fine. And we'll give, as only left-wingers have stated he'll give those people their president. And I asked them, who do you mean by those people? And they look at me like, you know what I mean. Are you referring to black people? Yes. Do you realize what kind of a racist you really are and you don't even know it? What do you mean? Yeah, that's what I figured your response would be. Here's some brainwash. Go use it. It's just stupid. And now, what was that you were saying about the number of, shall we call them detainees there at Guantanamo who have returned to combat? What?
There you go. Yeah, the detainees from Gitmo. And look, I got a real problem with Gitmo. It's like, you're holding somebody. This is the problem with it. Bring them a trial. Do it. Hold a military court. Bring these clowns to trial. Why have them languish at Gitmo, which is costing the taxpayers how much money a year? I mean, everything is upside down. I get it. These guys are terrorists. So, they're not battlefield combatants, but they might as well be. So have a military tribunal, hold these guys in court, build a prison someplace, and come on. But what Obama's done is I love this. The quote by John Kerry last week was just hysterical. They said, well, the man who was the terrorist who was released from Gitmo went back to the Middle East and he started doing terrorist again. And Kerry goes, well, he's not supposed to do that. And this is how out of touch these people are. But if you say anything, it's Islamophobic, right? If you say anything, you're a bigot because you're saying, well, maybe we shouldn't let these people into the country. Maybe we shouldn't let these people into the country. There's no way to vet them. Look at the two clowns in San Bernardino, and these aren't clowns. They're jihadis. And how do we know who's a jihadi? We don't. We have no idea. And I believe, and I didn't believe this 15 years ago when I first started looking at Islam, but all one needs to do is look throughout the Islamic world. There's a clip I show at my conferences many times, and I'll show it in Dallas, where this very fiery imam by the name of Safwat Higazi this is several years ago when Mohammed Morsi was running for president of Egypt. Morsi was elected. Immediately, the Muslim Brotherhood was behind him, of course, and they attempted to implement Sharia law. The Egyptian army toppled the government. Morsi wound up in jail, on trial. He was condemned to death. Who knows what they'll do with that? And now they've got Sisi, who is there, and more moderate, but the whole place is still a disaster. Tourism is just way, way down. I mean, if you want to go to Egypt and see the pyramids, now is the time to do it. Take several bodyguards who are armed. But I digress. The bottom line is this very fiery imam by the name of Safwat Higazi is in Tahrir Square at night. And Morsi and this whole, all the delegates are up there on the stage and stuff. And in the distance, Tahrir Square is filled mostly with Islamic men because the women are not allowed to partake in these type of rallies. So it's mostly Islamic men. And they're all yelling and screaming and doing what they do. And Safwat Higazi, very fiery imam, stands up and goes, the capital of the United States, the United Arab States, the capital of the United Arab States will be Jerusalem. And what's incredible about this, we kind of touched on this before, but I want to get into it again because if the American people saw what was happening, and when I show that clip at my conferences, people just sit there with their mouths are open in astonishment. They can't believe it. Why aren't we seeing anything like this? And that's the problem. The press doesn't do their job anymore. The press is supposed to be a watchdog on what's really going on. They don't do that. The press, for the most part, is so slanted to the left and is in the tank with the government that you can't believe anything. Isn't it interesting when Planned Parenthood, when these two guys went undercover, and by the way, the press does this every day, went undercover and spoke to this woman from Planned Parenthood. I talk about this in my book, The Abortion Holocaust. And then I'll talk about that briefly in Dallas under Days of Chaos, because that's what it is. Yeah. 1 billion people born, 1 billion babies aborted on this planet since Roe v. Wade, and I'm an alarmist? You tell me I'm an alarmist.
Seriously.
1 billion with a frickin' B.
Wait a minute. That's a real number?
That's a real number. It's over 1 billion. 60 million in this country. 60 million in America aborted since Roe v. Wade. 1 billion babies. And you tell me I'm a fearmongerer? You tell me I'm an alarmist? So that when these undercover people sit down with this woman from Planned Parenthood and she's munching her lettuce and drinking her Cabernet Sauvignon, right, her wine, and she's talking about the harvesting of baby parts. And the left refuses to believe it. And Fiorina challenged Obama and Hillary Clinton to watch the video. And all Obama did was spin it back, or women's rights. We need those women's rights to kill as many babies as we possibly can. And this is where we are. This is why this whole planet is so out of control. And here's something I'm gonna jump into the supernatural, because that's where it needs to go. People think, well, you know, so what? A billion babies aborted LA. Women has a right to do this, and you know they're just fetal tissue. Oh, really? You want to look what a little 6-week baby looks like with a beating heart and everything is pretty well formed, and its life at the beginning of conception, this explosion of information happens when sperm meets egg, and that DNA, which is information, is now it is explosion of information, explosion of energy, and it's viable at this point, in my opinion. The moment of conception is viability. Not a day later, not 48 hours later. The moment of conception, that fetus, that child, that baby is viable. Of course, the pro-life, the pro-abortion people will never say that, but that's what I believe. There's an exchange of information at that point, and now you've got a human being, period. And it allowed to develop, it will develop into a human being. And funny, what don't we understand about this? Because in California, if I were to take a condor egg and you just go, well, it's not a condor, and drop the egg, I'd be in jail for 10 years. Are you kidding me? This is how upside down we are, where a condor egg is protected. God forbid I, crack that thing open on the skillet and eat the thing. Are you kidding me? 10 years in the house and the hoosegow. But the baby somehow, that's not viable. But the condor egg is viable the moment the condor egg is hatched. Okay, I mean, or laid, not hatched, just laid. Somehow that's viable, even though the mother condor has to sit on the thing for who knows how long. It's viable. Don't destroy that condor. But the little information, the zygote, whatever you want to call it, somehow isn't. Nonsense. And so the left is all over this thing. And when Obama was challenged by Fiorina to look at it, all he did was spin it and tap dance around it. And I'm going to jump now into the supernatural.
All right.
Abortion, like it or not, abortion is a Luciferian, ritualistic blood sacrifice. That's what it is. And I'm not saying that the doctors and the people who are partaking in this are Satanists. That's not what I'm saying. But that's what it is. What can be more innocent than the blood of an unborn baby? And what people don't understand is when there's an abortion that takes place, blood from the woman and blood from the unborn fetus comes out. It flows out. And that, my friend, a billion of these things have opened the gates of hell. And that's why the planet, in my humble opinion, is in this death spiral. Well, that's just so negative. It is in a death spiral. We are in a place where I don't think there's any way out of this but up. And I mean that. I mean, he's got to call the saints up and up we go. And then he's got to come back to the planet, because that's the only way this thing's going to change. We're never going to change the ideology of the mullahs in Iran who, make sure that they write death to Israel on the missiles that they're firing. You can't make this stuff up. We're never going to change the ideology of Hezbollah, who have 150,000 missiles in their arsenal and chant death to Israel. We're never going to, change the ideology of the San Bernardino shooters who yell Allahu Akbar. Our God is the greatest, as they just wipe out 14 innocent victims. The ideology there is never going to be changed. We're never going to change the evil, in my opinion, and the ideology that we see in people like Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who just, let's kill as many babies as we possibly can. Hillary Clinton won't say abortion should be allowed, in her mind, to the last possible minute. Only when the child is born, then it's viable. I mean, this is how crazy the planet is, and we're not going to change it. We need a regime change, and this is my message at the Watchman Conference. We need a cosmic regime change, and there is an answer for that, and that's a biblical one, a supernatural one. The king has to return at some point, and I believe it's soon. And when he comes, he will rule with a rod of iron. Do you really think there's going to be pornography on the internet, if we even have an internet, in the Millennium Kingdom? No. You're not going to be watching porn on the internet in the Millennial Kingdom. Ain't going to happen. You know, they're not going to be streetwalkers in Chicago anymore. You know, you're not going to be people with guns running around killing people on the weekends in Chicago. It's all going to change. And to do that, and I'm not sure how it's going to work, but there's going to be a cosmic police force. It's going to be different. But that's my hope. You know, you say, where is the hope, LA? That's my hope. My hope is not in mankind. My hope is not in Donald Trump. My hope is not in a regime change in Iraq, because that certainly didn't work, or any place else. My hope is in him. That's it. That's where I'm down to. When I see these things, just like he tells us to do, the wars, rumors of wars, famines, pestilences, earthquakes in the first places, look up, because your redemption is coming. I am looking up. I'm expected, because I truly believe that the king has to return. In the meantime, we're in the throes of a cosmic regime change.
Mm-hmm. You know, you didn't hear this, of course, because you hadn't come on yet, but at the beginning of the program, let me just add some more. Look, I was talking with Joyce Riley. You know Joyce Riley, right?
Sure.
She's a real sweetheart, and I had listened to her. She's had me on her program before, and just a nice person. You know, she's been dealing with this stage 4 cancer thing for a while, and somehow she's still alive. She just keeps going. And there's some stuff about that I'll share with you that I cannot do now because of the legal ramifications of even mentioning it, but I'll share it with you at some point. You might be interested in it. And when I'm clear of the legal restrictions, I will share it with the Caravanners, but I can't do that right now. It's much like you talking about the new Watchers film. After I had listened to her for about, I don't know, the better part of an hour, I just had to say, look, there is no solution. It was about, the poisoning, everything from depleted uranium to the poisons being blown up over there, and all different kinds of chemical weapons, and then the vaccinations that they have, this cocktail of vaccinations that they're giving the soldiers, making them nuts in some cases,
Right.
making them sick. Then they get over here, they're depressed, then they load them up on all kinds of dope, and they're killing themselves or killing each other. They're killing their families. I mean, and I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, there's just no end to it. But I'll share something with you just as I'm aware we're doing a program now. But I've had I had the strangest premonition. I really did. Not because I had some idea of, self-aggrandizement or something, but it was just almost a what if with me. What if I was going to be sitting behind the fader on a microphone? You know, the one you slide up when you want to talk and you pull it down when you want to stop. About the time that we need to go ahead and turn the lights off on this whole thing. Yeah, and in talking to Joyce, L.A., I got to tell you, it was like, Joyce, I'm hearing you, but there's no solution.
There is.
This is so screwed up, so far down the road, and so big. There is no solution. You can shut the borders. You can do the term limits. You can audit the Fed. You can get the left-wing poison mongers out of university and academia. You can do all these things. But who's going to do it? When is it going to happen? What is it going to take to bring this about? Now, going to the stories that you didn't hear about. Okay, I started raising hell about Fukushima right after it happened in 2011. Nobody really, they let me do it. They let me do it. Premier let me do it. But they didn't want to do it because radiation shows are scary. It'll drive people away. Okay? Well, you heard about the whip site out in New Mexico, right, with stuff burning underground, having problems there. You heard about the one up north somewhere. I don't even remember where it was. No, St. Louis. St. Louis. They got an underground fire there. Haven't heard a word about it. We know about Fukushima. Well, here's what we have now, folks. Not only do we have Indian Point up in New York. You want to hear a good one? Okay, get this. And I'm just going to run it past you again. Let's see here. Where are we? Oh, yeah. Oh, that's the massive fire. Here we go. Shocking number of cancers around leaking nuclear plant near New York City. Tens of thousands of cases reported recently. Quote, more than anywhere else in U.S. Why is this story not being covered by everybody? Teacher says, I can't believe the number of teachers who have gotten cancer. Uncontrollable radioactive flow coming from nuclear plant near New York City. Actual releases are trillions of times higher than reported during latest leak. Cracks in multiple spent fuel pools. Intense investigation underway to see if it can be stopped. Oh, but that's not all. That's not all. That's not all at all. What is arguably America's least well-placed nuclear power plant is leaking radiation into the sea. This comes from Fusion.net. Guess where it is? The University of Miami has found that the Turkey Point nuclear power plant, located just south of Miami, has caused levels of tritium, a radioactive isotope in Biscayne Bay, to spike to 200 times higher than normal level. Folks, here's the thing about tritium. It cannot be chelated. Once it gets into the water, and the water gets into you, you're stuck with it. So let's see, we've got, and just one more, sorry about that. We also have Oconee County in South Carolina. They got a fire over there. They heard a huge explosion. Now, what causes an explosion at a nuclear power plant? I know. I'm guessing, but I think I know. I think it's probably a reactor. So you got Hanford still. You got Diablo, whatever. What is it? Diablo Canyon, I think it is. You got the Whipside. You got Fukushima. You got Oconee County. You got Indian Point. You got, and you got Turkey Point. I think everybody better come and hear the Watchman. You don't have to hear we Watchmen here, but you need to hear some Watchmen, because I'm telling you, I've known this since I was a little kid. The biggest change that has ever happened in recorded history, and potentially the greatest catastrophe, is riding up our backsides right now. So be advised. There are some problems we can solve. And I'll also tell you this, it's not all gloom and doom, because there are protections available to you that are what you would call supernatural. Mm-hmm. There are protections available to you. There is guidance available to you, but they're not available to you if you're not willing to believe it. And that's just the way it is. If it sounds woo-woo, so be it. If it sounds impossible, so be it. But it's true. And I can tell you that with looking right at you, right into this camera, because I've lived it. And because I've lived it, I'm able to be here with you now. If I had not lived it, I assure you, I would not be here. I got to turn it back over to you, LA, or I'll just keep going. I guess I can do, but yeah.
I wrote, John, I wrote a chapter in Days of Chaos about Fukushima. We never hear word one about this in the press over here. We never hear anything about it. There's no monitoring that the public hears about it. There's, interestingly enough, where my wife used to work at Malibu High School, the cancer rate is way up in there. And, there people are starting to wonder what's going on here. The cancers are way up, and they realize that apparently the area where the high school and the junior high school is at one point was used for the military for something, either in World War II or whatever. Remember, this is Malibu, so in World War II, I mean, that's way out in the boonies. And they were some kind of military base, whatever, and cancer rates are way up there. The bottom line is Fukushima is an ongoing event. There's a site called Fukushima Diary. You can go and you can pretty much check up on what's going on in Fukushima. But the radiation poisoning is unbelievable. Chernobyl continues today, and there's no turning back the clock. There's no fixing Chernobyl. There's no fixing reactor 4 at Fukushima. It's not going to happen. And there are earthquakes now which are not the rise of the 7.0, which used to be a big deal. Now it's the rise of the 8.0, the 9.0. And a 9.0 tumbler that's off the charts. I mean, it's like they can go on for like 30 seconds, which seems like a lifetime apparently. That's game changing. And all it takes is if they get another big one out near Japan, God forbid, near Fukushima, and those reactors go into the ocean, which some theorists believe it's certainly a viable scenario. Now what? Now what? I mean, already millions of gallons are leaking into the Pacific Ocean. There's a biblical passage specifically found in the book of Revelation, which talks about a third of the sea basically dying, just dying. It just becomes, dead. And I'm not equating this with Fukushima, but I just find it incredibly troubling that our media over here does nothing, says nothing about it. I'm sure some government agency somewhere up and down this coast is tracking it and seeing, the radioactive elements in the water and all of that. I'm sure someone's doing it. At least I would hope so. But there's no reporting on it per se. And anytime someone starts talking about, oh, it's fine, the water's good, and the surfers are out here every day, and people continue to eat the sushi. But it's a real problem, and it's not going away. And there is no long-term solution to Fukushima, just like there's no long-term solution with Chernobyl. The sarcophagus, which the Russians went in, and they dumped all this concrete over the reactor. That was their solution. Well, that's decades ago. The problem now is the concrete has weathered. And now they're talking about, now what do we do? Take that sarcophagus out and build a new one, or construct something over the old sarcophagus? Because once again, the radioactivity is beginning to leak over Chernobyl. And they are seeing genetic aberrations in the wildlife, in the animal life, all in and around Chernobyl. So this is a real problem. And this is why, in my opinion, again, the good news of all this, and it's a supernatural solution to a problem caused by mankind, because that's what it's going to take. And I realize some of your listeners don't want to travel in the supernatural. That's fine. That's your opinion. That you can do it all you want. I am a frank supernaturalist. And I think we've reached a point in time where the only solution to the problems caused by mankind is a supernatural one.
Well, there it is. Amen, brother. I look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks.
Yeah,
it's going to be good.
It's going to be really good. Very cool.
Yeah, you're one of those people that I don't mind standing close to when the pictures are taken. I admire your work, and we admire you. It's good to hear you fired up, because I mean,
yeah,
as is stated, if nobody hears, and if the Lord's not with us, then the watchmen are watching for nothing. So may the Lord be with you, and may the Lord be